Hey guys, tonight we begin something a little different. Imagine you're perched high in the jagged Andes, the world still asleep below you. There's a thin bite in the air, the kind that clings to your teeth, and all around you is the gentle shuffle of wool-covered hooves. A cloud skims the ridge just above your hut, dragging its feet like a sleepy ghost. It's the kind of morning that's not for the faint-hearted, or for anyone who enjoys being warm. You are an Inca Llama keeper, and no, you probably won't survive this job if you dislike early mornings, long hikes, or animals that stare at you like they're plotting your downfall, which they probably are. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Always fun to see who else is up way past bedtime. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes crack open before the light creeps through the thin llama hair curtain hanging across the doorway. It's not an alarm that wakes you, but the subtle thump of a hoof against stone, again, then another, followed by a snort and the unmistakable sound of someone chewing far too aggressively just outside your window. It's Chuki. Again, Chuki is your oldest llama, and though llamas don't technically have eyebrows, she has somehow mastered the expression of exhausted disappointment in you. You roll out of your rough blanket and hit the cold floor like a dropped potato. Bones crack, knees mumble. You mutter something you probably shouldn't say in front of the sun god. Outside, the world is still mostly shadow. The mist clings to the slopes like gossip to an old auntie. Somewhere down in the valley, a rooster crows in a village you can't even see, but you're heard, your fuzzy, bell-wearing, emotionally manipulative herd. They're ready to go. You chew a wad of dried coca leaves stuffed into your cheek like a squirrel hiding regrets. It helps with the altitude and the anxiety and your stubborn morning headaches. Historians still argue whether coca was mainly a medicine, a sacred offering, or just a socially acceptable way to survive daily llama drama. One by one, you shuffle to the enclosures, low stone fences that don't really contain anyone so much as convince them it's too early to escape. The herd moves slowly, but with purpose, like they've read the day's itinerary and would like to file a formal complaint. There are 17 llamas, you know each one by name, smell, and spiritual attitude. Chuki is the matriarch, of course. Then there's Sumac, who believes she's a bird, and Yawa, who once kicked your uncle into a potato pit. You don't blame him. Your uncle kind of deserved it. You rub your hands together, slap a bit of morning dust from your tunic, and begin the process of gentle yelling. Up! Wake up, you furry soap bars! Your voice echoes down the slope. A few birds flee. One llama sighs. The sun peeks over the edge of the eastern peaks, lighting up your stone hut like a match. You squint into it, shielding your eyes, remembering for the 100th time that you should have built the doorway facing west. But hindsight is 20/20, unlike your current vision, blurry from sleep and second-hand llama spit. The smell hits you next. Not awful, not lovely, just present. Like old hay, fresh dung, and slightly wet wool, all decided to hang out and never leave. It's oddly comforting now, like the musty embrace of a familiar old poncho. You head to the small pile of gear by the post, rope leads, hand-woven saddlecloths, and the soft jingling of copper bells that serve more to amuse tourists, you call them flatlanders, than actually track your herd. Each pack is slightly different. You learned long ago not to load all the potatoes on one llama unless you want them all eaten before the next village. A quick stretch. You hear your knees click like someone testing a new quipu knot. You mutter to the sun again. This is the quiet part of the morning. The sky is changing from bruised blue to pink yolk, the stones underfoot slowly shedding their frost. One of the llamas gives a low grunt, hungry. Another one sneezes, loudly, right on your leg. Bless you, you say flatly. You break off a handful of ichu grass, dry and yellow, scratchy as a mother-in-law's advice, and toss it to the nearest three. Chuki glares. You hand-feed her instead. Royal treatment for your woolly majesty, you murmur. You do realize you're technically a state employee, right? She chews without breaking eye contact. You are not winning this battle. In the distance, a breeze. Z carries the sound of a flute. Someone in the next valley, maybe, already walking the trail before you. You wonder if it's old Tupac and his dogs, or maybe one of the young porters with legs like stalks of maize and absolutely no joint pain. Must be nice. You remember something your grandfather once said as he sat sharpening a stone knife. Llamas teach you patience, or they kill you. Either way, you stop complaining. It was unclear if he was joking. He rarely was. A little ways off, the snow is melting off a slope that feeds the valley stream. You'll need to cross it today, again, hopefully this time without the mid-thigh plunge into icy shame. Your left boot still smells like swamp from last week's misstep. You pack slowly, checking each bundle, coca leaves, dried meat, woven cloth, a small copper mirror meant for trade, each item precious, not just valuable, sacred in some way. You may be a simple llama keeper, but you carry the threads of empire. They say the Inca roads span more miles than the Roman highways, paved with stones so perfectly fitted, even now the weeds hesitate to grow between them. Some believe the gods helped shape them. Others say it was just a lot of unpaid labor and very sore backs, but your boots don't care. They just ache, loudly. The herd is mostly calm now, munching, staring at nothing with ancient wisdom and mild disdain. You sit briefly on a sun-warmed rock, the only chair you own. You sip from a gourd of chicha, fermented maize drink, and wince at the sour bite. It wakes you better than the cold air did. Above, the condors are circling. Not for you, hopefully, just waiting to see if you trip and break something valuable. You finish tying the last knot. The herd jostles. Chuki spits again, probably at Sumac, who deserves it, honestly. You rise, you grunt, you stretch again, arms out like some sleepy, underpaid sun priest. The day begins for real now, time to move. The mountain waits, the trail stretches out like a ribbon of dust. The llamas shuffle forward, and so do you, into the endless, ordinary rhythm of footsteps and hooves, your quiet life wrapped in wool and wind. You trudge. The sun has barely warmed the high ridge you're climbing, and already your knees are making complicated threats. Behind you, the llamas are in various stages of readiness. Some shuffle dutifully, some lag behind, chewing mysteriously retrieved snacks, and one, yes, Yawa again, is attempting to moonwalk down the slope like a woolly delinquent. The trail is narrow, lined with sharp-edged stones that like to chew up your sandals and occasionally your dignity. You lean slightly into the slope, shifting the bundle on your back and reaching for the walking stick you keep strapped with a leather cord. It's worn smooth by years of gripping, even though technically you're not that old. Llama years don't match human years, but you're fairly sure they age you faster. One llama bleats behind you in a tone that's 60% hunger, 30% complaint, and 10% personal insult. You sigh without turning. I already fed you. This is emotional blackmail, and I won't fall for it. You fall for it. You break off a dry handful of ichu grass and hold it back without stopping. A slobbery tug confirms the transaction. The herd moves again. Mornings on the trail are predictable. The sun comes up on the wrong side of your face. The rocks pretend to be steps, but definitely aren't. And every llama believes it is, in fact, the chosen one. You've learned not to argue. Every step sounds louder in this thin air. Crunch of sandals on gravel, thump of hooves, clink of bell, snort, repeat. You try to distract yourself by counting the herd aloud. Again, it's pointless. They're all here. You always count them. But the rhythm of numbers is calming. Chuki, Sumac, Yawa, Mama, Wirako, Inti, Kayla, Anka. Each name lands in the air like a charm, tying you back to something real. These animals, for better or worse, are your world. Each one has a history. Like Mama, who once wandered into a sacred temple's meditation garden and ate half the ceremonial flowers. You had to explain that to a sun priest who smelled like old incense and looked like he hadn't smiled since the last solar eclipse. Or Wirako, who got tangled in his own lead rope and rolled down a slope so gently it looked choreographed. He was fine, you weren't. These aren't just animals, they're co-workers, comedians, and occasional life coaches. You've cried into one more than once. She licked your face. It was sweet and gross. The trail winds up into a pass, high and narrow, with cliffs on both sides like giant stone bookends. The air grows thinner, the world quieter. You hear nothing now but the soft wind and the strange gurgle of your own stomach. The Highland breakfast diet, mostly tubers and sass, doesn't last long. You pause by a crooked boulder shaped like a sitting man. Every time you pass here, you nod at him. He's been watching this trail for centuries, probably judging your posture. As you rest your hand on his mossy shoulder, you think about how long this route has existed. Way before you, before your father, before even the grand roads of the empire were carved in the mountains. This path has always been here, trodden by bare feet, woven sandals and hoofbeats. Historians still argue whether the Inca built entirely new routes, or simply improved ancient ones passed down by earlier civilizations. Either way, you're not impressed. You'd be more impressed if they had included some kind of escalator. You reach a wider section of the trail and pause to let the herd catch up. Chuki arrives first, naturally, looking far too smug for someone who just hiked a vertical kilometer on a grass diet. You pat her flank as she breezes past you. Don't act like you're not winded. She sneezes on your boot. You breathe deep. The air smells like dust, dry grass, and llama breath. The sky above is cloudless now, blinding blue with a sun that still doesn't feel like it's doing its job. Your lips are cracked. You pull your scarf higher. The wind up here is not mean, it's just indifferent. You continue walking. As you move, your fingers twitch out of habit, touching a stone here, tugging a vine there, leaving the subtlest of trail signs. These are messages for other herders, little markers only those in the know would understand. A small triangle of stacked stones by a fork in the road might mean, landslide 2 days ago, don't risk it. A broken stick pointing west might warn of a sick animal on that path. A certain pile of llama droppings in a ring of pebbles. That's a joke, or a threat, or both. It's trail gossip, primitive, practical, and weirdly effective. You whistle a short melody as you walk, one taught to you by your uncle. Short, high, descending. It says, all clear, moving west, see you soon. Somewhere in the distance, faint and shrill, someone whistles back. You smile. You don't know who it is, but it doesn't matter. You are part of a living, breathing, humming network. It's funny, nobody ever really teaches you this life. You learn it by waking up in the cold, by walking until your legs don't complain anymore, by listening to the silence between the birdsong and realizing that silence says more than most people. You stumble slightly on a loose stone, catch yourself with a grunt, and glance back to make sure no one saw. The llamas stare. Go ahead, you mutter. Laugh, at least I don't chew my own vomit. Chuki makes a noise that might be approval. You walk a bit longer, cresting the pass at last. Below, the valley opens like a palm, lush and green despite the altitude, dotted with plots of potatoes and maize. Smoke curls from a hut down near the edge of a river, the only sign of other life in this enormous landscape. You point down at it and say to the llamas, that's where we'll sleep tonight if none of you decide to start a coup. They stare blankly. You take it as agreement. The trail dips now, sloping in long curves, your legs adjusting to the new angle like old friends trying a new dance. The wind shifts, carrying a scent you recognize immediately, dried meat and clay. There's a trader's shelter near the base, maybe an hour away. You'll stop there to swap news and maybe pick up a few supplies, if they have anything left. It's the slow season. You pick up your pace, letting gravity do more of the work. The llamas follow, kicking up little puffs of dust as they trot lightly behind. The bells jingle. One or two fart. You do not judge. Your feet ache. Your teeth ache. Weirdly, your left earlobe aches. But this is the life you chose, or rather, the life that didn't offer you an exit interview. You are a llama keeper, a carrier of goods, of whispers, of traditions, You are invisible to history and vital to it at the same time. You walk and they walk with you. The packs creak, your shoulders complain, but the trail doesn't care. It slopes down like an argument you've already lost. The llamas are in better spirits now, mostly because downhill travel requires less effort, and because they can smell the place you're heading to. Or maybe they just like watching you trip more often. One hoof strikes a stone in just the right way to send it bouncing off the path with a little musical plink plink plonk down into the gorge. You all pause to watch it disappear. 10 points if you hit a condor, you mutter. Nobody laughs. Llamas are terrible at comedy. As the trail rounds a bend, the little trader's hut comes into view. Stone walls, patched thatch roof, and a lazy column of smoke curling out like it's stretching after a nap. There's a pen out front, usually for goats, and 2 large baskets propped near the doorway. One basket is full of dried tubers, the other? You sincerely hope it isn't what it looks like. It is. You raise a hand as you approach. A figure in a patched cloak waves back without standing. It's Cantu, the old woman who runs this stretch of the route. She's been doing it since you were small enough to ride a dog, which, for the record, you weren't allowed to do, even though your cousin did it twice, and somehow he's a messenger now. Cantu grins at you with half her teeth and twice the wisdom. "Still walking those woolly gods, are you?" she calls. "Still pretending you don't love them?" you reply, grinning. She snorts and lifts her gourd of chicha in salute. You start the process of guiding the llamas into the holding pen. Some go willingly. Some require negotiation. One insists on a 5-minute staring contest. You lose. Cantu tosses you a cloth bundle as you sit beside her by the fire. You unwrap it, 2 dried maize cakes and a strip of salted meat. It smells like nostalgia and dust. You bite in, pretending you don't need it desperately. "So," she asks between sips, "any news from the valley?" You shake your head. "Same as always. Potatoes, marriages, ghost sightings." She nods slowly. "Typical. That's the thing about this life. News travels fast. But it doesn't change much. People marry, they plant. Someone sees a floating light in the field and swears it's a spirit. Someone else blames gas. Historians still argue whether these ghost sightings are genuine cultural beliefs or a mix of high altitude and fermented corn hallucinations. You don't argue you've seen one. Or at least you think you did. It was late, you were cold, and the llama beside you definitely saw something too, unless she was just chewing at an awkward angle. You take another bite of the maize cake. It crumbles all over your tunic. Crumbs for the road gods. Cantu leans forward. "Had any spit fights lately?" You gesture to a fresh wet patch on your sleeve. "Every day," you sigh. "They're undefeated champions." She cackles, a warm, dry sound like a happy kettle. "They keep you humble. The gods love that." The llamas are already lying down in the pen, legs folded neatly, packs slumped like tired backpacks. You love how quickly they settle, how calm they can be after hours of chaos. You're a little jealous. You and Cantu sit a while longer, watching the shadows crawl up the hills as the sun shifts behind a crag. The air smells of smoke, stone, and a hint of something sweet, maybe roasted oak or the faint memory of old sugarcane. She tells you about a new trade route someone's plotting near the coast, far from here. You nod politely, but know you'll never see it. Your route is the high one. It's carved into your bones. Eventually, it's time to move on. The llamas grunt as you coax them back up. You refill your water gourd from Cantu's clay jar, thank her with a pebble wrapped in a coca leaf, a token, a tradition, and resume your trudge. The afternoon light is sharp now, slicing sideways through the peaks, casting long shadows of you and your woolly entourage. You walk on stone steps older than your entire lineage, so well cut they seem to breathe with the mountain. Some say the Inca stonemasons whispered to the rocks, others believe they just had an unreasonable amount of free time and a disturbing passion for symmetry. A buzz of flies greets you at the next bend. You brace yourself. Yep, a llama has pooped, dramatically, artistically, right in the middle of the path. You pause, look at the sky, mutter a prayer that's really just creative swearing. You scrape the worst of it off your sandal and glare at the most likely culprit. He stares back with perfect innocence. You name him Actor of the Year and move on. The trail gets steeper again, cutting across a slope dusted with golden ichu grass. The wind picks up here, brisk and insistent, like your grandmother on market day. It tugs at your cloak, whistles through your teeth, and carries the sound of distant flutes. Again, a reminder that you're not alone out here, even when you are. Your stomach grumbles. You try to ignore it. One of the llamas stops suddenly. You nearly trip over it. You step beside her. It's Kayla. She's staring at something off the path. You follow her gaze and blink. There, nestled in the side of a hill, is a little stone marker. Not one of yours. Not a modern trail sign. It's ancient, weather-worn, shaped like a stepped pyramid no taller than your shin. You walk to it, brush off the dust, and recognize the carving. 3 stacked circles, an old Inca symbol, possibly astronomical, possibly meaningless. Historians still argue about that one. You place a pebble on top just in case it's sacred, or haunted, no point taking chances. The llamas move again, you move again. The slope flattens a little, and your boots find a rhythm. Crunch, tap, slide, repeat. You hum a song your mother used to sing when she worked the loom. It keeps your mind from wandering into the what-ifs. What if you'd joined the priesthood? What if you'd left for the coast? What if you'd married that girl from the corn village who could balance a full basket on her head and still run uphill faster than you? But no, you're here. Still walking, still trudging, still watching the same cloud drift ahead of you like it's leading the way. Behind you, the bells jingle. One of the llamas makes a sound like a yawning goat. You sigh. Still miles to go, you murmur. But your feet already know the way. Your fingers fumble with the last of the leather straps as you secure the pack onto Chuki's back again. The knot slipped loose an hour ago, and now the entire herd thinks you're incompetent, especially Chuki, who turns her head just far enough to sigh directly into your soul. It's early afternoon now, and the slope you're on is unforgiving, like a staircase that forgot it was supposed to level out eventually. The sun above is a pale circle, bright but not warm, and every time you look at it too long, your left eye twitches. Chuki shifts her weight to remind you she's still waiting. You pat her haunch with exaggerated ceremony. There, you say. Now if you could kindly refrain from rearranging the pack again with your back hair, that'd be great. She ignores you. Of course. You step away and take a moment to survey the terrain ahead. The trail cuts sharply to the left, skimming the edge of a steep drop where the rock face just sort of stops being considerate. Below is a jagged patchwork of boulders, moss, and your potential regrets. The Inca, in all their genius, managed to carve trails into places where no trail should exist. Sometimes the road feels more like an idea than a physical structure, something held together by faith and a shared fear of falling. You adjust the strap of your shoulder pouch, the ropes worn to the consistency of a dried eel. You've promised yourself for 3 seasons you'll replace it. You never do. Ahead, a line of stone slabs forms a natural bridge across a narrow ravine. Each slab is slightly uneven, just enough to keep you humble. You step onto the first one. It shifts. Your heart joins your stomach for a brief panic party, but it holds. The llamas follow without hesitation. Show-offs. As you continue, the smell of warm dust and lichen fills your nose. You catch the faintest whiff of something sweeter, distant wood smoke maybe, or a patch of wild herbs being crushed under a hoof somewhere. It makes you think of the mountain tea your grandmother used to make with boiled eucalyptus and some mystery root you were never allowed to identify. You reach a stretch of path where the trail curves into a natural windbreak, and for the first time in hours, you feel the stillness. It's not silent, no. There's the hiss of the breeze, the occasional croak of a bird, and the ever-present llama noises, chewing, snorting, mild disapproval. But it's peaceful. You take a deep breath and sit down on a flat rock by the trail's edge, letting your legs dangle toward the empty space beyond. The herd clusters nearby, shifting and resettling, their packs sagging slightly with the afternoon weight. You pull a small cloth bundle from your belt and unwrap lunch, a cold potato, a hunk of salted cheese, and what may be a roasted guinea pig, toe. You try not to look directly at it. You eat slowly, letting your jaw do the work while your brain takes a quick vacation. The potato's dry, the cheese is salty enough to power a small city. The toe goes back in the bundle for later. Maybe. As you eat, you look out over the valley. It stretches endlessly, ridges stacked like sleeping giants, each one a little softer, a little more faded than the last. In the far distance, thin silver rivers twist like cracked glass under the sun. Smoke curls from a few scattered dwellings. Somewhere, someone is weaving, someone else is sharpening a blade, and someone is yelling at a stubborn donkey. The empire is quiet, but it's alive. You brush off your hands and sip from your gourd. The chicha's warm now, but not unpleasant. You tap your boot against a stone in rhythm, humming an old trader's tune. According to the elders, this route you walk was once a royal corridor. Inca runners, or chasqui, would fly down this very path carrying messages, dried fish, or fresh gossip. They say those runners could cross mountains faster than a storm cloud and deliver a message by mouth alone, word for word. Historians still argue whether they used drugs to boost their speed or simply had terrifying work incentives. One slip, one mistake, and you could be reassigned to llama duty for life. You chuckle to yourself, maybe that's how you got here. The llamas are resting now, folded like woolly deck chairs along the path. Yawa is chewing on what might be a sacred shrub. You decide not to interfere. He's probably meditating. The light shifts slightly. A cloud drifts across the sun, dragging a cool breath of air behind it. You rise slowly, bones groaning like an old wooden cart, and clap your hands twice. The llamas react immediately. Heads rise, legs unfold. Chewing slows but does not stop. You're impressed, or intimidated, maybe both. You tug at the nearest lead rope and begin the next stretch of the climb. As the trail ascends again, you pass by a set of low, weathered walls. Barely ruins now, just the ghosts of foundations. You pause to peer into one of the collapsed corners. A shard of pottery sticks out from the dirt, painted red and black, simple geometric lines. You leave it. You're not a treasure hunter, you're a walker of roads. Besides, the shard belongs to the earth now, or the mountain, or whoever's watching. You say a quick prayer, just in case. The llamas push on. The trail becomes steeper, narrower, crueler. You wonder for the 100th time if anyone has ever tried to flatten a mountain just to make trade easier. Probably not. Probably smart. Your muscles burn, but you keep going. There's no finish line, just another bend, another breath, another argument with gravity. At one point, Chuki stops dead in her tracks and refuses to move. You try reasoning. You try flattery. You try begging. She sneezes. Eventually, you remember the emergency banana leaf tucked in your pouch. You wave it gently in front of her face like a peace offering. She sniffs it. You step backward. She follows. You repeat. Llama diplomacy, 1, human pride, 0. After another half hour, the terrain evens out again. A narrow ridge lined with broken slabs that once formed a proper road. Inca engineers were meticulous, even obsessive. Their stones fit together without mortar, so tightly that centuries of rain and llama traffic still haven't undone the work. Some say they had knowledge lost to time. Others say they just had a million guys with strong backs and no internet. You make it to a small plateau by late afternoon. There's a low wall to sit on and a short stone pillar marking an old road fork. You tie off the herd nearby, give them each a treat, dried fruit, salt lick, whispered encouragement, and then lie back on the wall, arms behind your head. You stare at the sky. It's that endless Andean blue again, like someone forgot to paint in the clouds. You can feel the heat leaving your body. Your shoulders throb, your knees pulse. But you're alive. The wind tickles your cheek. A bell chimes. Somewhere below, a bird shrieks something obscene. You smile. This is your quiet life. Wool, wind, and the endless road. Your left sandal is loose again. You've tied it 3 times since noon, and each time it rebels, slipping off your heel with a stubborn little whip that announces your incompetence to the entire mountain. It's not even that the sandal is worn out, though it definitely is. It's the terrain. This part of the trail is a cruel mosaic of jagged stones and powdery dust, the kind of path that shifts under your foot, just enough to twist your ankle, but not enough to justify whining out loud. Not that the llamas care either way. They continue their steady descent down the trail with the serene, smug confidence of creatures that have never once paid taxes. Chuki, as usual, leads the charge. She sways slightly as she walks, the weight of her pack making her rear wiggle just a bit more than necessary. You swear she does it for effect. She knows she's in charge. You're just the guy who carries snacks and apologizes when the weather gets dramatic. As you round a bend, the air thickens slightly. The trail drops into a narrow gully where sunlight struggles to reach. The walls on either side rise steeply, blanketed in moss and ancient lichen. It's quiet here, eerily so. The sound of your own breath seems louder. The llama's bells go oddly mute. You can hear the wet squish of hooves in the mud. This part of the trail always feels different. They say this pass is sacred, though no one agrees why. Some say the stone walls were once part of a royal shelter. Others whisper about a hidden burial site. Historians still argue whether this gorge was carved naturally or carefully widened by human hands over centuries, piece by piece. What you do know is that no one speaks much here, not even the animals. Which is odd, considering one of your llamas usually complains through her nose like a passive-aggressive tea kettle. You walk carefully, watching your step. The stones here are slick, dark. Some of them shimmer with the kind of moisture that never fully evaporates, even in summer. Your breath clouds in the cooler air. You feel a chill crawl up your arms and settle behind your ears. Maybe it's just the change in temperature. Maybe it's the way sound disappears here, like the mountains are holding their breath. You glance back. The herd follows silently. Even Yawa, who once tripped over a feather and blamed the bird for months, is walking with unusual grace. You pause beside a strange boulder, flat-faced, unnaturally smooth. You've passed it dozens of times, but today you notice something, a small notch on its surface, shaped like a spiral. Faint, but deliberate. You run your fingers across it, a carving, a symbol, or maybe just the erosion of time playing tricks on your imagination. You murmur a quiet blessing anyway, just in case. As you press forward, the gully opens slightly and a breeze slips in. With it comes the scent of sun-warmed moss, crushed herbs, and, oddly, something sweet, like fruit or honey. It makes your stomach sit up and take notice. A little further down, you come across what you've been hoping for, a patch of munya plants, their bright green leaves fanned out across the rocks. You crouch, pluck a few, and rub them between your fingers. The scent is sharp and minty, with a note of something clean and ancient. You chew a leaf. It bites back, but it clears your head. You offer a few sprigs to Chuki, who sniffs, sneezes, and walks away. Her standards are higher. The trail starts to rise again, gradually, but enough to make your calves whisper rude things. The gully narrows into a twisting climb, carved into the spine of the ridge itself. Stones give way to crumbling gravel and tufts of grass that hide the occasional ankle trap. You slip once, nothing dramatic, just enough to feel your dignity sag. Behind you, a llama snorts. "Don't," you warn without turning. "I still remember who stepped in fermented maize mash last week." No response, just the rhythmic jingle of hooves and pack straps. You crest the ridge by late afternoon. The light is gold now, thick, heavy gold that turns the world syrupy. The air shifts again, warmer now, with the scent of sun-baked earth and faraway smoke. Below you lies the trail's next leg. a long, winding descent through rocky pasture land. In the distance, you spot another llama train, tiny dots moving steadily along the opposite slope. You wave on instinct, not expecting them to see. One of the dots waves back. You smile. This is how it is. Llama keepers don't need to speak to know the routine. You see each other from afar, nod, and keep walking. It's a brotherhood, or perhaps a fellowship of people with terrible backs and very few dry socks. You begin the descent. It's easier going downhill, but somehow just as exhausting. Your knees take the brunt of it, and your thighs remind you that gravity is not a gift, it's a test. As you walk, you pass old road markers, stacks of rocks shaped like small pyramids, one with a tiny bundle of faded corn husks tucked beneath it, an offering. You nod respectfully. Farther down, the trail splits briefly, a fork between two similar paths. You pause, squinting at the sun's position, trying to remember the last time you took the right-hand route. Then you see it, a faded red stone tucked into the base of a marker. It's one of yours, a trick you use to signal which fork is safer in the wet season. You smile. Sometimes past you is surprisingly clever. You take the left path. The landscape widens now, low hills dotted with scrub brush and the occasional shadow of an old terraced field. Once, long ago, people lived here in numbers. Now it's quiet. Just you and your four-legged co-workers. You pass the remnants of an old granary, nothing left but part of a wall and the outline of where storage baskets once stood. You stop briefly, crouch, and trace the edge of a stone slab with your hand. There's a notch here too. This one you recognize. It's a calendar mark used to measure shadows on the solstice. You lean back on your heels and mutter, still keeping time after all these years. You give the herd a break here. The sun is low, but there's time. You let them graze on a patch of wild grass while you drink from your gourd and rest against a rock warmed by the day. You close your eyes, and for a moment, just a moment, the world stops. No footsteps, no wind, just the memory of footsteps, the echo of wind. You hear your own breathing, feel your heartbeat in your palms, and in that quiet pocket you're reminded why you walk, why you carry, why this strange, slow life matters, because here, in the quiet with nothing but sky and fur and stone, you feel more you than anywhere else. The llamas grunt. Chuki kicks a rock, breaks over, you rise, and walk on. You're starting to question the evolutionary purpose of llamas. Sure, they're fluffy, sure they carry things, but right now, as one of them refuses to move forward because the dirt is, apparently, too reddish, you wonder whether they were created solely to test human patience. A divine prank, maybe a celestial bet. Chuki stands next to the fussy one, chewing very slowly, eyes half-lidded, as if to say, I warned you about him. You crouch, tug gently on the lead rope, whisper a few motivational phrases, then promise to name your firstborn child after this particular llama, if he'll just move his feet already. Eventually, with a dramatic snort and the slow-motion sigh of someone inconvenienced by gravity, he takes a step. Progress. The trail ahead is dry and dusty, running along the side of a slope that has never heard of a guardrail. Below, sharp rocks litter the base like tiny accusations. One misstep and you're a historical footnote, a very flat one. You keep walking, boots scraping against the trail's edge, and think, for not the first time, that your job should come with hazard pay, or at least a complimentary back massage once a decade. Above you, the sky turns that sharp Andean blue again, not a cloud in sight. The sun is cruel today, bright and insistent, with no shade except for the occasional generous rock or woolly shadow. You pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders and take another sip from your gourd. Warm. Again, like fermented bathwater. And yet, it's kind of perfect. The silence, the rhythm of your feet and the hooves, the quiet clinking of copper bells. There's something deeply meditative about it, even when your toenails are considering quitting. You begin humming. Nothing special, just a soft, off-key tune your mother used to whistle while folding woven blankets. The melody carries on the wind, echoing faintly off the cliffs. One of the llamas grunts in what you choose to interpret as approval. As the sun climbs higher, you start noticing things, little things. A crack in a boulder shaped like a spiral, a single blue flower growing out of solid rock, a hawk's shadow sliding silently over your face. You're not alone on the trail, not really. There's the mountain watching, the sky humming, the animals judging, the ghosts of every trader and walker who came before you, their footfalls layered beneath your own. You reach a narrow stretch bordered by two short stone walls, old, weathered, but still standing. These were part of a checkpoint once, or maybe a resting place, or a ceremonial marker. Historians still argue whether the Incas placed these structures for practical use, spiritual resonance, or just because their architects had an obsessive need to leave stone rectangles everywhere. You pause, step into the shadow between the walls, and instantly feel the temperature drop. A wave of goosebumps rises on your arms. The air here is stiller, like it's holding something. You glance to your left. Tucked just inside the wall is a pile of offerings, recent dried flowers, a small carved stone, a scrap of colourful cloth weighted down with a llama tooth. You swallow, not out of fear but respect. Someone came here before you. Someone paused here too, looked at the same horizon, and left a piece of themselves behind. A wish, maybe, a prayer, a memory. You whisper something under your breath, not a formal prayer, not exactly. Just a quiet thank you for the safe passage so far, for the wind at your back, for the llama that hasn't tried to eat your rope in at least 3 hours. You move on. The path widens into a gentle downward slope, lined with tufts of dry grass that ripple like golden fur in the wind. The llamas perk up. They can smell the next grazing spot. You pick up your pace slightly, though your thighs immediately lodge a complaint. And then you see it. A resting hollow, not a village, not even a real camp, just a shallow, grassy dip in the land with a ring of stones for a fire and the remains of an old shelter wall. A perfect place to pause. You drop your pack with a grunt. The sound you make is somewhere between relief and ancient furniture. The llamas begin circling, sniffing, selecting their preferred resting positions like picky tourists choosing sun loungers. You sit on a flat stone and remove your sandals. Your feet are unkind, wrinkled, dust-caked, slightly haunted. You rub them gently and sigh, glancing at the mountain slope to your right. Up there, just a bit further, is a carved niche in the rock. Tiny, faint, but you can make it out. A face, weathered by wind and time. Stylized, eyes wide, mouth open in an eternal whisper. Some call these watchers. Others call them windmouths. No one really knows what they were for, but it's watching you now, so you wave. It seems polite. You eat a handful of dried ochre from your pouch, sweet and chewy, like old root candy, and wash it down with the last of your chicha. You'll refill later, hopefully not from that weird stream where Wirako tried to bathe last week. That water is now morally unclean. As the sun begins to tip westward, shadows stretch out across the valley. The light turns golden, then copper, then the rich velvet of twilight. It's your favorite time. The mountain goes quiet, the wind holds its breath, and the llamas get extra dramatic about everything. You gather a few sticks and dry dung for a small fire. It crackles to life, offering the barest heat, but the perfect flicker for company. One llama, Kayla, lays her head near your knee. You scratch behind her ears. She tolerates it for 5 seconds, then walks off in a huff. Classic Kayla. You watch the first stars appear, one by one, like old friends arriving fashionably late. You think about the empire, not the empire of kings and battles, but the quiet empire. The one of footpaths and blankets, woven belts and morning tea. The one that lives in the calluses of people like you. The ones who carry the real weight. And tomorrow, you'll wake up and do it all again. Because someone has to walk the road. Someone has to keep the llamas moving. Someone has to watch the sky for that one, particularly judgmental, condor. But for now, your eyes grow heavy. The fire pops once, the night deepens, and your last waking thought is simply, don't forget to tie your sandal tighter tomorrow. The sun hasn't even opened its lazy eye yet when you're pulled from sleep by a familiar sound, a low, frustrated shrunk, the kind of noise a llama makes when it's standing over your sleeping mat, wondering why the food hasn't arrived yet. You open one eye. Sumac is staring at you, her face just inches away, her breath warm and aggressively herbal. You groan and sit up, brushing ash from your cloak. The fires burn down to a soft puff of smoke. Your legs creak. Your neck pops. Your lower back whispers something mean. Morning has arrived. The others are already up. Well, the llamas are. You are very much not. You pull on your sandals with resigned grunts and glance up at the slope. The sky is still dark but shifting, inky purple, giving way to a pale bruise of blue. Soon the ridges will turn gold, then peach, then hot sun white, and the day will begin whether you're ready or not. You feed the herd first, of course. That's the rule. You pluck handfuls of grass and sprinkle them into little patches, murmuring things like, "Here you go, Your Majesty," and "Chew responsibly, please." Wirako spits near your boot as a kind of thank you. You stand, stretch again, and start repacking the gear. It's always heavier in the morning. Not because of added weight, no, it's psychological. The packs know you're tired. They judge you for your posture. They cling to the earth in protest. You bribe them into submission with careful knots and quiet threats. Today's path is long and strange, crossing one of the lesser-known trade lines that links your region to the highland fields beyond. Few walk it anymore, but you've heard there's an orchard on the other side, and honestly, you haven't seen a fresh fruit in months that wasn't slightly haunted. You begin your climb. This slope is the kind that was definitely designed by someone with a grudge against knees. The steps are uneven, the air is thin, and every other rock is loose, just enough to test your confidence. But the view is absurd. Even in the early light, the valley behind you unfolds like a tapestry. Shadowed peaks, golden grass, curling ribbons of mist that slide down the ridges like silk scarves. You don't stop to admire it, of course. You don't have the energy, but you file it away in the part of your brain labeled reasons not to flee into the jungle and become a swamp hermit. Chuki walks beside you now, not in front, not behind, beside. A rare and mildly unnerving occurrence. You glance at her. "What's the catch?" you ask. She doesn't answer, obviously, but her eyes twinkle like she knows something. Something inconvenient. You keep walking. About a third of the way up, you encounter a small pile of stones, 3 stacked carefully, with a red feather wedged between the top 2. A message. You pause and study it. Red feather, wild danger ahead. 3 stones, human-made, not animal, wedged while fresh. Within the week, maybe days, you mutter a few choice words that you're not supposed to say before the sun reaches your shoulders. Then you sigh and keep going. You've come too far to backtrack just because someone up the trail might be flinging rocks or trying to marry off their daughter to every passing stranger. Again, you reach a narrow curve in the trail, one of those sharp switchbacks that make you question the reliability of physics. There's a chunk missing from the path, like a bite taken out of a cracker. Mudslide, probably. The llamas pause, rightfully suspicious. You inch forward, test the remaining stone. It holds. All right, one at a time. No pushing, no panic. And if anyone sneezes while I'm crossing, I will file a complaint with the sun god. They cross, one by one. You go last. Your heart thumps in rhythm with the earth, but you all make it. Just past the curve, the trail widens slightly and levels out. A rare gift. You stop to catch your breath, and that's when you see it. A single stone marker standing upright at the edge of a hill. Not tall, not decorated, but familiar. You walk to it slowly. It's a grave. There's no name, of course, just a loop of braided grass left at the base, already drying in the sun. You place your hand gently on the top of the stone and close your eyes. You don't know who they were. Another walker, another carrier, someone like you. Maybe they sat in this exact spot and thought, "This will do. This is a good place to rest forever." You whisper a quick blessing and continue. The trail meanders now, dipping and rising like a sleepy heartbeat. You pass a cluster of low bushes with yellow flowers. You pluck one, tuck it behind your ear. A small rebellion against practicality. The llamas approve. Probably. Mid-morning hits like a well-aimed pebble. The sun is sharp now, and the wind has taken a vacation. You begin sweating in that unfortunate way where every droplet chooses the most inconvenient place to roll. Down your spine, behind your knee, into your boot. You think fondly of cold rivers, of clay mugs filled with mountain tea, of shade that doesn't run away when the clouds do. As if summoned by your thirst, a soft, burbling sound reaches your ears. Water. You break into a near run, rounding the next bend to find a spring-fed stream trickling from the rocks. You drop to your knees and drink greedily, cupping the cold water in your hands, letting it wash over your cracked lips and dry throat. You splash some on your face. It burns and soothes at once. Your llamas take turns drinking, kicking each other gently to get the best spot. And as you lean back, water dripping from your chin, you spot something strange just beneath the surface, a carved stone partially submerged, round, with an etched spiral and several holes arranged in a pattern. A calendar stone, a marker of time. Historians still debate whether these were used by farmers to track planting seasons or by priests to count solar rituals. Either way, it's a quiet reminder. Time flows here, just like the water. Smooth, ancient, patient. You let yourself rest beside the stream for a while. Let the mountain hold you. Then finally, you rise, wring out your cloak, and press on. Because the path isn't finished yet, and neither are you. You squint up at the sky. There's a vulture circling. Just one. Just enough to feel personal. You're halfway up a rocky incline that some lunatic cartographer decided to call a gentle rise. There is nothing gentle about it. The stones wobble under your feet like they're trying to make a point. The air is thin, your tongue is dry, and that vulture hasn't broken eye contact for 10 minutes. You look back at the herd. They're fine, naturally, not a drop of sweat among them. Chuki's trotting along like she's leading a parade. Yawa has a leaf in his mouth and a suspicious twinkle in his eye. Kyla sneezes, then continues on with the serene indifference of a retired priest. You wish you could join them in that mental space. But you're too aware of your own knees. The sun is high now, and it's doing that thing where it feels like it's cooking your scalp through your hair. You pull your hat down tighter, drink the last inch of your gourd, and keep moving. Because there's no such thing as, let's pause for shade, when the shade itself gave up and went home. And then just over the crest you see it. A flat spot. A large, sun-bleached rock. A view that goes on forever. And a vulture. Still circling. You set your pack down, breathing hard. You're not dying, probably, but you are questioning all your life choices. You take a seat on the rock and pull out your lunch. A cold potato and a strip of jerky. It's not glamorous, but it's enough. You chew slowly, eyes on the horizon. From here, the Empire looks invisible. Silent. Just mountains and sky and green dusted ridges. But you know better. Hidden under the peaks and terraces is a network of motion. Runners, traders, priests, spies. All of it connected by roads like the one you're sitting on now. Historians still argue whether the Inca road system was more advanced than anything Europe had at the time. You don't argue, you just walk on it every day and wish someone had invented stairs that don't double as ankle traps. As you chew, something shifts in the wind. A sound, flapping. You glance up, expecting the vulture again, but it's something smaller, lighter. A bird, a kenti, the iridescent hummingbird of these hills, darting near your ear and then zipping off like it has extremely urgent gossip to deliver. The hummingbird is sacred to the Inca, a messenger of the gods, some say. Others believe it carries the souls of the departed between worlds. You believe it's just in a terrible hurry. You pack up and rise, time to move again. The trail turns sharply, winding down into a dip between two hills. Here, the wind dies and the sun settles in like an unwanted guest. You pass a few scattered stones, remnants of an old tampu, one of those roadside inns the state once maintained for messengers and government officials. You used to dream of staying in one, with a roof and water, and maybe even a blanket that didn't smell like fermented llama. Now it's just broken walls and sun-baked memory. Still you pause, set your hand on one of the stones. It's warm, almost hot. You swear it hums beneath your fingers, though it might just be the pulse in your palm. Hope you had better boots, you murmur, to whoever used to sleep here. Then you move on. Midday brings with it the usual trial. You're full of dust, your shoulders ache, and your brain has started to drift. You hum. You count your steps. You try to remember the name of that girl from the potato village with the sharp elbows and the laugh that could break a clay jar. You're halfway through inventing a new song about sore arches when a voice cuts the air. Hoy! You freeze. It's a man's voice. Close. You peer up ahead and see him, a short, round fellow waving from a shaded perch by a rock outcrop. He's wearing a faded red sash and chewing on something green. He has no pack, but he's surrounded by empty baskets. A trader. You wave back. When you reach him, he offers you a seat without getting up. Classic. You sit. He pulls out a pouch and offers coca. You accept. It helps the legs and the brain fog. His name is Capac, and he's been walking these trails since before you were born. He used to have 4 llamas, then 2, now none. His back gave out 3 years ago, and now he hires boys to carry the loads while he waits at known meeting points. I've seen 25 eclipses from this trail, he says, squinting toward the sun. That's a lot, you reply, mouth full of coca. Not enough, he says, sighing. Still haven't seen the lake turn to smoke like the elders say. You don't ask for clarification. You've heard weirder. He asks about your route, your herd, the road conditions. You trade stories, some true, most inflated. He tells you about a village where the local priest has banned fermented maize after too many incidents involving fire and song. You laugh until your stomach hurts. Before you leave, he pulls out a wrapped bundle from his side pouch. It's small, square, and smells faintly of dried fig. Take it, he says, for the evening. You nod your thanks and tuck it away. You leave Capac behind, his shape shrinking in the heat shimmer as the trail pulls you forward. The sun's angrier now, the rocks are sharp again. But your steps feel lighter somehow. And then you hear it, a vulture crying above. You look up. There are 2 now, you groan. Oh, come on, I'm still moving. The llamas say nothing, but you feel their silent judgment as you trudge onward toward another curve, another mile, another weird encounter waiting just around the bend. You feel it before you see it. A shift in the air, cooler and more alive. The dry dust of the trail gives way to something lusher, greener, and soft underfoot. You round the next bend and suddenly, there it is. A valley unfurls before you, like a secret, finally deciding to speak. Terraced hills climb the far side in wide, graceful steps, dotted with low, stone walls and tiny, stubborn patches of green, crops clinging to life like sleepy cats to a warm stone. The terraces are old, ancient even. Their lines are so perfect they seem drawn with a god's compass, and running right through it like a silver ribbon stitched by hand is the road. It cuts across the earth with calm precision. Flat stones carved and placed so tightly that not even time has pried them apart. Some of these stones have been walked for hundreds of years, maybe more. You step onto it slowly, almost reverently. You don't always notice the road. Most of the time it blends into the trail, crumbling or buried under plants. But here, the empire is visible beneath your feet. You tap one of the stones with your boot, still solid, still holding you up, like a memory that refuses to fade. Historians still argue whether the Inca engineers used some kind of lost technology to fit these stones so precisely, or if they were just absurdly meticulous people with excellent eyesight and no social lives. You'd believe either. The llamas step onto the road behind you, hooves echoing softly. It's different here, the way the sound travels, sharper, crisper. Like the road itself is listening, you press on. The slope eases as you descend into the valley. The green becomes richer, the sun less harsh. Birds appear, hopping from stone to shrub, chirping things you're too tired to translate. And then, finally, the breeze shifts just right and you smell it. Smoke. But not the thick, choked smoke of something burning. No, this is sweet, woody, gentle. Someone's cooking. Somewhere nearby there's fire and food and probably gossip. You glance at Chuki. She sniffs the air too, ears twitching. You follow the scent. Past a line of fallen stones and around a thick bush of mole, the trail opens into a wide resting ground. Flat, grassy, well used. And in the center of it all is a man tending a small fire, a blackened pot bubbling gently above it. He looks up and smiles like he's been expecting you. "You're late," he says. You laugh. "Blame the trail, or the llamas, or my sandals." He waves you over and gestures for you to sit. You do, gladly. His name is Pumak. You've met him before, twice last season, and once 3 years ago when your cousin sprained his ankle trying to impress a girl with a backflip near a cornfield. Pumak knows the road better than you do. You do. He's walked every major route and still claims the worst slope in the entire empire is the one behind his mother's house. He ladles out a portion of the stew for you, thick, rich, and steaming. The smell is so good it might be illegal in some provinces. You take a bite and immediately forget you ever disliked life. There are beans, chunks of okay, strips of meat, you don't ask from what, and just the faintest touch of chili to wake your tongue up from its nap. You eat fast, but try to look polite about it. The llamas settle nearby, some lying down, others rolling dramatically in the dust, as if to say, finally. A break worthy of our greatness. You take another bite and glance out at the terraces beyond the camp. They say this valley used to feed the emperor's table, Pumak says between sips. Back when messengers had gold armbands and llamas wore bells made of silver. You nod. And now they're fed by old men and weirdos who sleep beside their herd, he laughs. Progress. You both sit in silence for a while, chewing, sipping, watching the sun begin its slow descent behind the opposite ridge. Funny thing, Pumak adds, I've heard that the emperor's food still came from here, even after the Spaniards arrived, quiet-like, hidden, carried by people who didn't stop walking. You nod again, slower this time. You've heard that story too. You wonder how many steps were taken, how many quiet deliveries kept the old ways breathing just a little longer. When the stew is gone, you wipe your bowl clean with a chunk of flatbread and lean back against your pack. Your bones creak, your stomach hums, your eyelids flirt with gravity. Pumak stands, stretches, and begins repacking his things. Gotta move, he says. Still 2 ridges before dark. You nod. Safe walk. And to you, watch out for that grumpy hawk up the trail. He hates sandals. You laugh and wave him off. After he disappears down the bend, you sit a little longer. Then you rise, call the herd back into order, and keep moving. The next stretch of road feels different now, heavier somehow. Not bad, just dense, like you're walking on top of stories, footsteps on footsteps, all layered beneath your own. The wind picks up slightly, a bell jingles, Kayla hums. And up ahead a vulture lifts off into the air, finally bored with your survival. You grin. Nice try, Featherbrain. You've got more road to walk. The light begins to shift. You don't need to look at the sky to know. The colors along the stones change first. What was bright tan turns soft gold, then hints of pink creep in at the edges of shadows. It's that time of day again, when the sun decides to show off. You're walking across a high shelf in the mountain now, where the trail flattens out just enough to let you daydream without face planting, the kind of trail that tricks you into thinking this job isn't so hard. That is, until the next slope punches you in the calves like a jealous cousin. Still you enjoy the moment. Ahead, the path stretches for miles, clear and dry, flanked by short stone walls and patches of hardy flowers that only bloom when the air forgets to be cold. The llamas walk calmly behind you, bells swaying, dust rising behind them in little puffs like footprints made of smoke. You squint at the ridgeline far ahead, where the road dips and curves out of view. "How many steps to Cusco?" you murmur aloud. It's not a real question, you don't expect an answer. But it's a thing you ask yourself sometimes, especially when the world feels heavy and the journey feels endless. Your grandfather used to say it was 2 million steps to the capital. Your cousin claims he once walked it in 30 days, though everyone knows he hitched half the way on a passing ox cart. The truth is, no one knows for sure. Historians still argue whether the Incas had a standardized method for measuring distance. Some say they used body lengths, others believe they counted rests, not steps. You think they probably just eyeballed it and hoped for the best. You're not going to Cusco anyway, not today, but it still lives in your mind like a half-remembered dream. The golden city, the belly button of the world, a place you've never seen but you've carried stories from, heard rumors about, and transported enough woven cloth toward to feel like you sort of know it. You take another slow step, then another, then a few more just to be dramatic. The road crests gently at a pass where the wind returns with a sigh. You pause there, not because you're tired, though you are, but because the view demands it. From here you can see 3 valleys, one narrow and shaded, one wide and green, and one that's mostly rock and regret. Somewhere in the second valley lies your next overnight stop, a small hamlet tucked into the hillside, known mostly for good corn beer and people who talk about potatoes like philosophers. The llamas catch up and stand beside you, flanks rising and falling in rhythm with your own breath. Chuki leans her shoulder against your hip. It's the closest she gets to affection. You pat her gently. "Don't go getting sentimental on me," she snorts. You move on and the trail begins to descend in tight switchback turns, each one carefully carved from the mountain like someone took a giant spoon and scooped out just enough to pass through. The stones here are older, you can tell, worn smooth from generations of hooves and soles, and darkened in the center where the foot traffic has compressed history into polished scars. You think of the people who walked here before you, messengers with lungs like bellows, carrying quipu knots full of secrets. Farmers bringing tribute. Weavers delivering textiles so fine they could catch the wind. Priests headed toward mountain temples with llama fat and coca leaves in hand. You step where they stepped. You follow their ghosts. There's something comforting in that. At the 4th switchback, you spot a small cave tucked into the cliffside. You've seen it before, always from a distance. Today, curiosity wins. You step off the path and climb a few feet up to it. The opening is low and narrow, but inside it's surprisingly deep. Cool, still. The air smells of stone, old soot, and something faintly herbal. You crouch, eyes adjusting, and there it is. A niche in the wall with a bundle of dried flowers and a tiny ceramic cup, cracked and soot-stained. Someone came here to speak to the mountain, or to remember someone lost. Or maybe they just needed a quiet place to cry where the llamas wouldn't judge them. You touch the edge of the cup, whisper a blessing, leave a sliver of bread from your pouch, then you crawl back out, brushing dust from your knees and rejoin the road. The herd hasn't moved. They know the rhythm by now. They know you always come back. You press on. As the sun drops lower, the world begins to glow. The grasses turn golden, the rocks blush. Everything becomes softer, even the trail seems to smooth out, if only out of pity. You're tired now, properly so. The kind of tired that lives in your spine and doesn't go away with a nap. But you keep walking because that's what you do, you walk. You walk because someone has to carry the bundles. Because there are towns waiting for news and children waiting for cloth and old men in doorways who always ask the same question. What's happening out there? You walk because your feet know the rhythm and your heart follows it. and you walk because somehow this is home. At the final turn before the valley floor, you pause again. Just one more moment, the wind has shifted, the stars are waking, and somewhere in the distance, someone has started playing a flute. It's faint. It wavers on the air like a lullaby or a warning or maybe just a tired man's tune. You listen, you breathe, you smile, then you step forward into the coming dusk. The first thing you notice is the smell. Warm, smoky and layered with something familiar. Roasting corn maybe, or dried meat on a clay griddle. Either way, it's the kind of smell that yanks the weariness out of your spine and replaces it with curiosity and just enough hope to walk the final stretch without cursing every loose stone along the way. The village isn't much, just a half circle of low huts pressed into the hillside, roofs thatched with ichu grass and walls built from stones that don't always agree with each other. There's no sign, no flag, no grand entrance. You just sort of arrive. One moment you're trudging through cactus and dust, and the next you're staring at a woman hanging maize to dry from a crooked beam. She doesn't look up, but you feel her see you anyway. By the time you step into the first cleared space near the houses, 2 children have already run off to spread the word. Someone's arrived. A llama keeper, probably. Maybe he's got thread, maybe he's got news, maybe he smells terrible and has stories to trade for food. They'd be right on all counts. You nod at a weathered man sitting on a stool, carving a flute from a length of hollow reed. He nods back, no words exchanged, just a twitch of the brow and a slow, mutual acknowledgement of how much your knees hurt. You guide the llamas toward a fenced pen near the far hut. The fence isn't much, just tied reeds and willpower, but the llamas don't argue. They settle quickly, already munching on scraps someone kindly tossed into the dust. You drop your pack, stretch, groan. From the corner of your eye, you catch the approach of someone carrying a clay jug. She's middle-aged, barefoot, and gives off the kind of aura that says, I know exactly how many potatoes are in this village, and you're not touching them without asking nicely. She hands you the jug without a word. You take a long, respectful drink. Chicha, cool and faintly sweet, with that slight fermented twang that makes your mouth hum. Trader or gossip? She finally asks. You wipe your mouth. Both, with a side of lint and sunburn. She laughs, just once, and gestures toward the bench by her doorway. You're late. We had music last night. You raise an eyebrow. And what made the mountains sing this time? She leans on the doorway, folds her arms. One of the boys brought back a story from the southern mines. Something about silver and trouble. Maybe Spanish. Maybe not. You nod slowly. You've heard rumors like that before, carried in whispers along the road. Flecks of truth buried in a heap of speculation. Historians still argue whether these mines were scouted by scouts of the crown or simply discovered by opportunistic locals with shiny ambitions. You don't weigh in. You're not a scholar. You're just a man with 17 llamas and an ongoing war with foot fungus. She leaves you with the jug and disappears inside. A moment later, a young girl peeks out, stares at you, and bolts when you wink. You sigh and lean back on the bench. The chicha sits warm in your belly now. The sun's almost down, the horizon glowing like the inside of a clay oven. Somewhere nearby, someone begins to drum softly. Just fingertips against a gourd, or maybe the side of an empty crate. The rhythm is slow, earthy, unhurried, a background hum to the night unfolding. The children reappear, chasing each other between the huts, giggling and shrieking like the mountain isn't listening. A dog barks once and immediately regrets the effort. You close your eyes for a second, just 1 second, but of course, there's no such thing as peace when you travel with a herd. A low murr from the pen tells you exactly what's happened. You rise, walk back to the fence, and sure enough, Wirako has managed to wedge his face into someone's hanging laundry. Again, you pull him back gently, untangle his ears from a loose shawl, and bribe him with a dried fig you meant to save for breakfast. He grunts, chews, accepts your apology. You apologize to the owner of the shawl as well, who waves it off with a look that says, "This is why we don't hang laundry within sniffing range of pack animals." You return to your bench. The drumming continues. Someone's started singing now, soft, a little off-key, but filled with that kind of honest tone that doesn't need polish to be beautiful. The stars begin their nightly rollout, slow and glittering. You recognize a few right away. The llama, the fox, the jaguar. Your grandfather taught you to trace them with your fingers when you couldn't sleep. He said each one watched over different kinds of travelers, tricksters, runners, loners. You asked him once which one watched over stubborn men with bad sandals. He laughed so hard he dropped his cup. You smile at the memory and sip more chicha. As the music drifts on, one of the village men joins you on the bench. He's quiet at first, then nudges your arm and hands you a hunk of roasted maize cake wrapped in a leaf. You raise it in salute. "To the road," he nods, "and to the feet that still walk it." You eat slowly, letting the sweetness of the corn balance the tang of the drink. After a while, he speaks again. "There's talk of change, not just coins and names, but deep change, the kind that shifts mountains." You glance at him. People always talk, but the mountains don't shift for rumors. "No," he agrees, "but sometimes the wind changes first." You both sit in silence after that. The stars wheel overhead. The fire in the center of the huts crackles as someone adds another log. Laughter ripples around it. Children dance in figure eights. Dogs laze at the edges, twitching in their sleep. You let yourself fade into the moment. Not a guest, not a stranger, just part of the road that led you here. Later, when the last drumbeat fades and the final ember dims, you'll lay your mat beside your herd, one hand on a warm flank and the other curled under your chin. You'll fall asleep to the sound of breathing, not just yours, but the village, the llamas, the road itself, like a song without a beginning or end. And in your dream, perhaps, the stars will whisper the answer to your question, how many steps to Cusco? Just one more, always one more. There's something different about the trail this morning. You can't quite place it, not at first. The village has long faded behind you, its sounds replaced by the soft crunch of hooves and the ever-present whisper of wind. The sun peeks low through a curtain of thin cloud, casting a pale silver over the stone path. And yet, the quiet is heavier. Even the llamas seem aware. They walk closer than usual, heads lower, their bells oddly subdued. Yawa keeps glancing back like he forgot something. Or maybe he saw something that doesn't want to be remembered. You shrug off the unease. Could just be the weather. Could also be that one particular stretch of the trail. You know the one. Every herder who works these routes has a tale about it. The long, straight section of the road, lined by black rocks that hum when the wind hits just right. Some say it was once cursed by a wandering priest who lost his sandals to a flash flood and vowed revenge on the path itself. Others claim it's haunted by the Shaski who never made it home. You don't put much stock in ghost stories. Well, not officially. But you do remember the time your uncle flat out refused to take this stretch past sunset. Said the stones remember things. When you asked what kind of things, he said, "The kind you don't want to find alone in your dreams." He was dramatic, but also very fast on his feet. As the path narrows into that fabled stretch, the wind drops altogether. The birds fall silent. The air feels paused, like the whole world is waiting for something. You tighten the strap across your chest, pull your cloak closer, step forward. The rocks here really are darker, volcanic maybe. Their edges aren't sharp, but the texture is wrong. Too smooth in some places, too worn in others. Almost polished. And the road? Flat. Perfectly flat. Unnatural even. The llamas hesitate. Chuki stomps a hoof once, but follows. Wirako snorts. Yawar bleats. You keep walking because turning back now would be worse. Halfway through the stretch, you feel it. A whisper. Not words exactly, more like breath moving past your ear. in a rhythm that doesn't match the wind. It's just behind you and just far enough that if you turned, it wouldn't be there. You walk faster, but not too fast. Running would be rude, and whatever this is, you've learned that rude gets you spat on, or worse. You keep your eyes forward, count steps, 47, 48. A stone to your right suddenly shifts. Not much, just a little. Enough to make you question if it ever really moved at all. The road creaks beneath your boots, not loud, not obvious, but with a depth that suggests it's remembering more than you want it to. You reach the far end of the stretch, and just like that, the air changes. The wind picks up. A bird cries overhead. Wirako breaks wind impressively. You laugh, out of relief mostly, and shake your head. Ghosts, huh? You mutter. Just rocks with opinions? Still, you don't look back. Not yet. Just ahead, the trail bends around a slope, revealing the beginnings of a familiar landmark. A massive boulder standing upright at the edge of the path, painted faintly with red ochre. You recognize the mark immediately. It's the Chilka Rumi, the speaking stone. Carved by an ancestor long ago, the stone supposedly records messages from the gods, or from lost travelers, or from lonely llama herders who had too much coca and not enough sleep. Historians still argue whether these sacred stones were ceremonial, directional, or simply really early attempts at motivational signage. You walk up to it, place your palm against the cool surface, and whisper a few words under your breath. Not a prayer, just a message, just in case the rock is still listening. Behind you, the herd stirs. You look back at the haunted stretch, now quiet, ordinary again, as if nothing happened. Don't get sentimental, you mutter to yourself. But still, you leave a small offering at the base of the stone, a twist of wool, a coca leaf, and a single grey pebble shaped just vaguely like a foot. You press on. The trail opens up now, cutting across the side of a high ridge. Below, the valley dips steeply into mist and shadow. You walk carefully, placing each foot with the kind of mindfulness usually reserved for monks and people carrying soup. The llamas seem calmer again. Chuki's chewing rhythm returns to normal. Yawa starts humming. You pass another marker, this one broken. A stone cairn half collapsed, its top scattered by wind or a careless hiker. You pause, restack 3 of the stones, and leave it better than you found it. It's what the trail deserves. As the slope levels out, you spot signs of life up ahead. Flattened grass, a pile of dung that's suspiciously symmetrical, llama-made, definitely, and a faint smell of smoke hanging in the air. You're not the only one travelling this stretch. You round the bend and see them. 2 other herders with their own modest herd of 7 llamas resting by a flat patch under an overhanging cliff. One waves as you approach. You recognize her, Koya, an old friend from the southern routes. She's bundled in a bright red cloak and chewing coca like it owes her money. You didn't take the ghost path, did you? She asks, half joking. I did, you reply. It offered me a job. I declined. She laughs, deep and throaty. Smart. Ghosts don't pay well. You join them for a short rest. The llamas graze nearby. The cliff above you offers shade. The other herder, a quiet man named Killer, brews something in a battered tin pot over a tiny fire. The scent is sharp and sweet, munya tea with something else. Maybe wild ginger. You sit on a rock, stretch your legs and accept a warm gourd of tea when it's offered. The 3 of you sip in silence for a while, Isla sharing the kind of peace that only comes from surviving a haunted path without making it weird. Eventually, Koya stands and brushes off her cloak. We'll camp a ridge up. Join us if the road doesn't eat you again. You nod. If I make it, bring chicha. Bring your own, she calls over her shoulder. They disappear over the next rise, leaving you with your thoughts and the last few sips of tea. You take one long look back at the trail you crossed earlier. The stones sit quiet now, but you still feel like they're watching. The slope after the haunted stretch is gentler, but your legs feel like they've been replaced with sacks of wet quinoa. You're not even sure if the ghosts tired you out, or if your knees just finally realize they're several years older than the rest of your body. Either way, every step now comes with a grunt, a muttered insult to the mountain, or a poorly veiled bribe to your own feet. The sun has begun to dip low, dragging long shadows across the path. The light softens to that golden hour glow, the kind that makes even dusty boulders look poetic and llama spit sparkle like holy water. You scan the horizon. Ah, there it is. A flattened area near a low outcrop, sheltered from the wind by a semicircle of boulders. A few tufts of hardy grass poke through the ground like overconfident eyebrows. It's not much, but it's home for the night. You sigh deeply, the kind of sigh that starts in your toes and rattles your ribcage, and start unpacking. First, the llamas. They know the drill. Chuki takes the spot nearest the outcrop. Yawa chooses the highest, most precarious rock and climbs it for reasons known only to himself. Kayla flops down mid-path, daring you to try to step around her. You unfasten their pack slowly, letting your hands move on muscle memory. Cinch, untie, lift, slide, repeat. A rhythm as familiar as your own name. By the time the last pack is off, you're kneeling on the ground, arms limp at your sides, sweat crusted on your back like a second, saltier tunic. And then finally, you sit. Not just any kind of sit. The kind of sit that comes with a groan, an exhale, and a noise that sounds vaguely like flubber. You stretch your legs out in front of you, wiggle your toes, watch your sandals sigh in relief. Good work, team, you mumble toward the herd. Wirako blinks once. Kayla snorts and kicks a pebble at you. You smile. As the evening settles, you begin building your tiny campfire. Nothing fancy, just a few dry sticks, a handful of grass, and a carefully hoarded chunk of dried dung that you've been saving for just this occasion. It's the llama keeper's secret fuel, light, efficient, and impressively unsentimental. Soon the flames crackle gently, casting flickers of orange light on the nearby stones. You hang a little pot over it with your last handful of grain and dried potato slices. It won't be gourmet, but it will be warm. And warm is everything. While it cooks, you lean back on your rolled-up cloak and begin the evening ritual, the foot rub. You don't have soft hands. Your hands are all callous and grit, like someone sandpapered them into usefulness. But you know your feet like old friends. You know where the blisters form, where the bruises bloom, and which toe always threatens a rebellion during steep descents. You massage your arches, muttering soft curses and praises in equal measure. From the corner of your eye, you catch movement. Not spooky ghost movement, just llama mischief. Chuki is slowly inching her way toward your pot. Her eyes are half-lidded, her pace deliberate. She thinks she's sneaky. You don't even turn. Don't even think about it, you say aloud. She freezes, waits, takes one more step. You point at her. This stew is not your destiny. She turns, snorts, and wanders off like she lost interest, not you. Classic. The stars begin to peek out now, blinking slowly into the darkening sky. First the llama constellation, then the fox, then the mighty condor, stretching its wings across the sky like a celestial blanket. You stir the pot gently. The smell is comforting, earthy, starchy, and slightly smoky from your questionable kindling. When it's ready, you eat straight from the pot, using a flat stone as a spoon. The heat burns your tongue a little. You don't care. The taste is humble. But here, with nothing but the mountain and a ring of furry companions, it's perfect. After dinner, you check the herd. No tangles, no limp hooves, no missing members. Wirako has decided to lie with his neck stretched flat like a sleepy snake. Yawar is already snoring. Chuki is chewing thoughtfully, probably reflecting on her near theft and how she might do better tomorrow. You lie down beside the fire, pulling your blanket over your legs. The stone under your head is hard, but it's familiar. Your body settles into the dirt like it's exhaling with you. You stare up at the stars, letting your thoughts float. Somewhere down in the valley you can hear a drum, just one, distant and slow. A celebration, a prayer, or just a bored farmer tapping his fingers on an old pot. The night has a rhythm. You close your eyes, then open them again just to check. There it is. A faint jingle from the far side of the camp. You sit up slowly, heart suddenly aware of its own rhythm. The herd is quiet. The wind is still. But you definitely heard a bell. You grab your walking stick and stand, brushing crumbs off your legs. You step softly, eyes scanning the shadows. The bell jingles again, faint, quick. You round the edge of the camp and find nothing. No animal, no movement, no wind. Just the bell swinging gently from a bush. It's one of yours, the extra. The emergency bell tied to your pack, but you didn't hang it there. You stare at it for a long moment. Your skin prickles. Then you reach out, stop the swing, and hang the bell back on its hook. Back at the fire, you sit again. Pull your blanket tighter. Look at the herd, all present, all asleep. You lie down, close your eyes, and whisper into the night. Good one, but you'll have to try harder than that. The stars shimmer, the fire crackles, and this time you fall asleep with one hand still wrapped around your walking stick, just in case. There's a sound you know better than your own heartbeat. It's not dramatic, not like thunder or a jaguar's growl. No, this one is small, soft, precise. The faint, melodic clink of a llama bell. You open your eyes to the dim, pre-dawn light, cold and blue like river stones. You're not startled. You're not even surprised. In fact, you were halfway expecting this. Because that bell, it's moving, not swinging randomly in the wind, not jostling from a dreaming llama. No, this one rings like footsteps, measured, unhurried. Just beyond your field of vision, you sit up, slow and deliberate, blanket falling off your shoulders like a shed skin. Your walking stick is already in your hand. You look to the herd first, all present, Chuki, curled like a regal boulder. Wirako, legs in the air like he's been surprised mid-nap. Yawa, okay, he's chewing on his own ear strap again, but he's there. So who's wearing the bell? You stand, breath held, and follow the sound. Past the campfire, now just glowing coals. Past your pack, where the emergency bell should still be hanging. It's not, of course it's not. The trail slopes gently just beyond your little shelter, cutting into a narrow corridor between two stone walls. And there, at the very end, you see it. A shape. Not a ghost. Not some smoky figure rising from the dust. It's a llama, or it looks like one, but taller, straighter, the fur darker, less fluffy. The eyes, not vacant, not calm, but aware, sharp, and around its neck, the missing bell. It turns and vanishes, not runs, not walks, just gone. You blink, you rub your eyes, you whisper something in a language you haven't spoken since your grandmother's funeral. The sky lightens a little more, and then, as if nothing happened, the wind returns, carrying with it the normal morning sounds, yawning llamas, distant birds, your own joints creaking as you exhale. You shuffle back to camp. All your animals are where you left them. The bell is still gone. But now there's a strange calm in your chest, like a weight lifted, or maybe shifted. Some would say it was a spirit, an omen. Others might call it sleep deprivation, and a diet consisting of 3-week-old potatoes. You won't tell anyone. Not yet. Instead, you begin the usual morning rituals. Shake out the dust. Pack the blankets. Stretch the legs. Feed the herd. They seem well rested, suspiciously so. Chuki nuzzles your elbow. You nearly drop your dried maize cake. You don't do affection, you mutter. She stares, then sneezes. Back to normal. You repack the bundles, adjust the saddles. Retie Kayla's chest strap for the 3rd time. She keeps shifting it like it's a fashion accessory. And just as you're ready to leave, you hear it. Clink. Behind you, you turn slowly. There, in the center of the fire pit, is the bell. Your bell, resting neatly in the ashes. Cool to the touch, you pick it up. Weigh it in your palm. It shouldn't be there. You checked last night. You saw it with your own eyes. You don't say anything. You just tie it back to your pack, extra tight this time. And then you walk. The trail today hugs the ridge, sweeping wide like a slow breath before diving into another saddle between peaks. You pass a few cairns along the way, one decorated with old feathers, another with a strip of woven ribbon, sun-faded and frayed. You leave a pebble at each one, a habit, a promise. The road isn't empty, though. A few hours in, you spot another caravan heading toward you. A single herder, 5 llamas, and an expression that says, "I've been awake for 19 days and I'm only halfway to wherever I'm going." You recognize her. Sort of. Her name, Mayu. You've met twice. Once during a harvest festival where someone got into the sacred chicha and sang love songs to a mountain. And once more when you both were forced to share a narrow cave during a storm, listening to the wind scream like an angry ancestor. You nod, she nods back. Then she says, without any preamble, "You saw the black llama, didn't you?" You freeze. Your mouth opens, closes. She keeps walking. "That means you're lucky," she calls over her shoulder. "Or cursed, but definitely not boring." You blink. She's gone. You keep walking. The trail winds downward again, toward a small outcropping of stone huts once used as a checkpoint. A stone post still stands at the entry, half covered in moss, carved with spirals, and a single worn face, round and smiling, with one eye larger than the other. You pass under it and whisper, "Still watching, huh?" It doesn't answer, but it doesn't have to. You rest there for a while, let the llamas graze, eat a little dried fruit, stare at the clouds rolling in from the east. The sky darkens. You smell rain. A soft drizzle begins, just enough to turn the dust into sticky paste. The llamas grumble. You wrap your cloak tighter and keep moving, because the trail doesn't stop for rain, or ghosts, or dreams you haven't admitted were dreams. By late afternoon, the sky clears again, and the path levels out near a shallow pool of clear water. You let the llamas drink. You crouch, splash your face, and catch your reflection in the ripples. You look tired, but different. Like maybe, somewhere during this strange, quiet, wool-covered life, something shifted. Maybe it's the bell, maybe it's you. You don't say anything, you just keep walking, because that's what the trail wants. One foot, then the other, and if something watches from behind the rocks, let it watch. You've got a herd to lead and miles to go. The trail narrows again, threading between 2 tall ridges like a needle, drawing you deeper into the folds of the mountains. The sun above is caught in that awkward angle between warm and lazy, too low to give you heat, too high to grant you shade. You walk anyway, because you always do. Your cloak is damp from the earlier drizzle, but you let it hang. The coolness is welcome, even as your boots begin to squeak in that sad, resigned way that means they're rethinking their life choices. The llamas plod along behind you, quieter than usual. No spitting, no drama, not even a full-body shake from Kayla. It's almost reverent. You glance at Chuki. She glances back. It's a look that says, "Yes, we all saw the ghost llama, and no, we're not discussing it right now." You nod slightly and return to the silence. Above you, the sky begins to reveal its early stars. Not all at once, just a twinkle here, a flicker there, like tiny eye blinks between clouds. And somewhere behind the ridgeline, a single condor glides in lazy circles, its wings stretched like a forgotten banner of the gods. You remember your grandfather once said the stars knew things before people did, that they whispered to the llamas first, and the llamas, out of pure spite, kept the best secrets to themselves. You didn't believe him then, but now, well, let's just say the night sky seems a little smug tonight. You reach a bend in the trail and pause to let the herd catch up. Chuki brushes past your side like a ship hugging a harbour. Wirako yawns so wide it's borderline theatrical. Yawa stops to inspect a suspicious patch of moss and nearly walks directly into a rock. Everything back to normal, sort of. The trail continues up a slight incline flanked by stone terraces long gone to seed. Once, these shelves fed entire households. Now they grow weeds, dreams, and the occasional feral guinea pig. You stop at one of the terraces, crouch and run your fingers through the dry soil. Still fertile, you think, still waiting. You sprinkle a few coca leaves there, an offering for nothing in particular, just a thank you to the earth for not collapsing under your weight today. The wind shifts. And with it comes the stars, not just the handful you saw before. Now they pour into the sky like they've been uncorked, an avalanche of pinprick light. They settle in clusters you know by heart: the llama, the fox, the serpent, the long-eared man who forgot his blanket. That last one may not be official, but you've sworn you've seen it. You set up camp a few paces off the trail, near a low wall that once marked a garden. The rocks are cool and dry, the spot is flat, and there's no wind to fuss with your fire tonight. You unpack slowly, your hands moving by habit. You don't even have to think anymore. Pack here, blanket there, firewood, well, dried llama droppings, stacked just so. As the fire begins to crackle, you pull out your meal for the evening, a few strips of jerky, a chunk of sweet potato, and the little wrapped bundle you forgot you had, the one given to you days ago by that old trader, Pumak. You unwrap it. It's a dried fig cake, dense, sticky, and smelling faintly of spices you can't name. You break it in half and offer a piece to Chuki. She accepts it without fanfare. That's basically her way of saying she forgives you for making her sleep beside Wirako last night. You eat your share slowly, chewing as you stare into the fire. The night hums. You stretch out beside the fire with your cloak around your shoulders and your walking stick close at hand, just in case. Though really, you're not sure what it would do if another ghost llama showed up. Maybe politely ask it to leave. You close your eyes briefly and listen. You hear the llama's breathing. You hear Kayla mutter in her sleep. You hear the crackle of the flames and the whisper of wind along the stones, and then something else. Not quite a sound, a presence. You open your eyes, the fire flickers, and there, across the flames, sitting on a rock like it's always been there, is an old man, not a ghost, not shimmering or see-through, just old. Wool cloak, sandals, wrinkled hands folded on a walking stick, a faint smile on his lips, eyes that shimmer like mica in torchlight. You don't move, you don't speak. He doesn't either. You stare at each other for a long time. Then finally, he nods and is gone, just like that. The fire cracks, the wind returns, the night goes on. You don't panic, you don't question it. You simply lie back, eyes wide open now, and stare at the stars. One of them seems to wink at you. A shooting star, perhaps, or just the universe reminding you that not every journey is yours to understand. You think again of Cusco, of how many steps it takes, of how many feet walked this path before you, and how many still will. You close your eyes again, slower this time. The warmth of the fire settles into your bones. And if you dream tonight, you hope it's just of llamas who behave and boots that never loosen. But probably not. The world is pale blue and silver when you wake. You're not sure what stirred you first, the sound of rustling hooves, the soft thump of Chuki sitting down directly on your sandal, or the fact that your back is currently protesting like a small riot has broken out along your spine. Either way, it's morning. You groan softly and sit up. The fire's gone cold, but a little ring of heat still lingers in the stones. Ash clings to your sleeve as you stretch, joints crackling like ancient corn kernels in a pan. The llamas are already moving, nibbling at sparse patches of grass, inspecting each other's faces for leftover fig crumbs. You watch them quietly for a moment. Peaceful. Predictable. Slightly ridiculous. Then you look up and see it. Above you, the sky is perfectly clear, the rising sun just brushing against the tops of the ridges, and there, directly overhead, is the constellation your grandfather always pointed out when you were little. He called it Kakapacha, the cracked world. Just a small grouping of stars forming a jagged split across the dark. Some say it represents the line between the living and the dead. Others believe it marks the fault where the sky was once broken by gods and hastily patched together. Your grandfather said it was where the llamas escaped from when they first descended to help the people. That part might have been added for bedtime drama. You rise slowly, brush the dust from your knees, and begin the usual routine. Blanket rolled, cloak folded, packs retied, lead ropes checked, and, for reasons you still won't admit aloud, you count the bells, just in case. All 17, present and accounted for. The trail today winds upward again. Shocker, really. It hugs the side of a steep slope like a ribbon pasted onto the bones of the mountain, with just enough space for one herder and a particularly passive-aggressive llama at a time. You glance down the side. It's a long drop. Beautiful, though. You walk carefully, placing each foot with the same focus, usually reserved for sacred ceremonies, and dancing across a floor full of loose maize. As you climb, the air thins again. That crisp, cold sharpness that bites your nose and fills your lungs with invisible stones. You chew coca leaves slowly, rhythmically, letting their warmth spread behind your cheeks like a fire you're not in charge of. An hour in, you reach the shoulder of the ridge and stop. There, stretched out below you like a green and gold mosaic, is an enormous valley. But just any valley, this one is alive. Terraces cascade down the sides like steps for giants. Smoke curls from several small clusters of huts, and you can hear, faint but real, the distant beat of drums. You recognize this place, not because you've been here, but because you've heard of it. It's called Chhatawakra, the place of the llama horn. Named not because the llamas here have horns, you checked, but because the shape of the valley itself resembles a pair of great tea-curling horns when seen from above. You've heard it's one of the oldest highland trade hubs still in use. Quiet, isolated, but steady. You begin the descent. It's long and slow, winding in and out of little switchbacks carved with maddening efficiency, the kind of path that was clearly designed by someone who never had to carry a pack animal full of heavy textiles down it. At one turn, you find a stone bench half buried under moss. You sit. Not long, just enough to rub your calves and tell your knees. Almost there. Wirako flops beside you dramatically. Kayla begins chewing a twig with alarming commitment. Chuki just stares into the distance, like she's remembering an old betrayal. Eventually you stand, stretch, and move again. As you near the valley floor, the trail splits. One path winds toward the far edge, where a line of smoke suggests more households. The other, narrower path leads to a circular stone platform surrounded by a ring of carved pillars. You choose the second. You've heard stories of this place. Travelers say the stone circle was once a gathering point for traders from across the empire, a place of neutral exchange. No fights, no taxes, just wool for grain, herbs for metals, stories for silence. You step onto the platform. The stone underfoot is smoother than expected, polished by generations of movement. The pillars stand like sentinels, each marked with old carvings, maize, llamas, the sun, the moon, a hand holding a thread. You walk the circle once, just for luck. Then you sit again right in the center and listen. Nothing, but also everything. The wind, the birds, the rustling of fur and rope. And underneath it all, something deeper, a hum, like the mountain remembering. You think about the empire, not the stories of kings or battles, but the quiet empire, the one built by hands like yours, sandal-worn feet, bent backs, rough cloth, simple rituals, llamas, especially llamas. You pull out a little flute from your pack, a cheap one, carved years ago from a reed that whistled more than sang. You haven't played it in ages. You blow a single note. It's terrible. The llamas look offended. You laugh. A soft, real laugh that echoes against the stones and bounces up into the sky. This is your moment. You play a second note, slightly less terrible. You keep going. Nothing fancy, just a small tune your aunt used to sing when she thought no one was listening. The tune winds through the air. And then something strange from across the circle. Behind one of the pillars, another note. You stop playing. The note comes again. A soft echo, a trick of the wind. You stand, walk slowly toward the sound. There's no one there. Just a small pile of coca leaves at the base of a pillar, fresh. You stare. You don't ask questions. Instead, you add your own. A strip of llama wool and a few grains of dried maize. Then you step back, gather the herd, and head toward the huts beyond the ridge. You won't speak of this moment, and not yet, maybe never. But you'll remember it every time you hear the wind hum, every time a note escapes your reed flute uninvited, and every time you see the stars arranged in that broken line, that kakapacha, the cracked world, always letting something slip through. The path into the village at the edge of Katawakra is steep, narrow, and cobbled just well enough to destroy your ankles if you stop paying attention. But the moment you step over the threshold stone, just a simple carved slab lying flat across the entrance, you can feel it. This place has history, not just the kind in dusty scrolls or crumbling stones, but the kind that hums in the walls, soaks into the dirt, and lingers in the smells of chicha and fire-roasted tubers wafting through the air. The llamas trot in confidently, like they've visited before, which they haven't. But they've definitely heard stories. The first person to greet you isn't a person, it's a chicken. It launches itself toward your feet with a flutter of furious feathers and the aggressive confidence of something that's never lost a fight. You dodge, barely. Then a voice calls out, laughing, "That's Kara! She guards the maze." A boy appears, no older than 10, missing a front tooth and wearing a poncho patterned in triangles and mischief. You bow, slightly. "I promise I mean no harm to your maze." She doesn't care. She just likes to bite travelers. Noted. The boy vanishes into a house, and a moment later, a woman emerges, early 40s by your guess, but with the posture of someone who's carried more than her share of corn sacks and familial drama. She eyes your herd. "Llama keeper?" You nod. She tilts her head. "Wool or word?" That's the question out here. Are you carrying bundles, or are you carrying news? Bit of both, you reply. Then you're welcome. Pen's over there. Food's around the corner. Questions come later. Simple terms. You like that? You guide the llamas into a communal pen where they immediately begin judging the hay situation. Chuki gives you a look that translates to, "This is barely acceptable." You toss her an apple slice you've been saving. She accepts the bribe. After unburdening the herd and checking their hooves, you make your way to the open fire circle near the center of the village. Several people sit cross-legged, eating, chatting, sewing. One old man is weaving a fishing net despite being nowhere near water. You sit at the edge, close enough to be polite, far enough to escape social responsibility. Someone hands you a bowl. You nod your thanks. Inside, roasted mashwa root, cheese curd, and a thick smear of pepper paste that could probably knock out a mule. It's perfect. As you eat, the conversations around you shift naturally toward what you've come to think of as the question. Any news? It's asked in many ways. What's the road saying? Or did you hear about the temple boys? Or even just, anything strange lately? You decide to start small. There's a landslide near Yanayaku. Trails passable, but only just. A few people nod. That's useful. A trader from the east says the coast is getting restless, more guards than usual on the roads. Fewer fish coming up. Grumbles now, some worried, some dismissive. And, you add slowly, someone spotted Spanish coins in the southern markets, real ones, not the clay fakes. That earns silence, the kind that makes the fire pop louder. One man mutters, "Bad luck, that kind of silver." Another says, "Better we carry gods than coins." You nod once and go back to your mashwa. Then a soft voice beside you. "And what about the sun priests?" You turn. An old woman, face like a cracked gourd, but eyes still sharp. You shrug. Still shouting at clouds, Still pretending they're in charge? She chuckles. Good, I like some things to stay the same. After dinner, you're invited to share a drink with the village head, who turns out to be a quiet woman named Sakra. Her house is small but clean, with bundles of dried herbs hanging from the ceiling and a suspiciously fat guinea pig watching you from the rafters. She pours you a cup of something warm, corn-based, thick, and mildly terrifying. You drink it, you smile, you pretend your tongue isn't on fire. Long road? She asks. You nod. Strange road? She raises a brow. Ghosts? You hesitate. Sort of. She doesn't laugh. Instead, she leans forward. Sometimes they follow the carriers, not out of malice, just habit. They remember the rhythm of the steps, the pull of the rope, the sound of bells. You think about that. The way the black llama moved, the echo of a flute you didn't play, the bell that reappeared in the ashes. You finish your drink. She offers you another. You decline with great enthusiasm. Later, outside, the stars are back. You walk once around the fire pit, then around the llama pen, checking each rope, each strap, each pile of judgmental fluff. All is well, mostly. Kayla is trying to lie on your blanket again. You nudge her off with the kind of loving firmness that says, I'm older than you and barely hanging on, please move. She grunts and rolls 2 feet away. You lie down and stare up. Tonight, the stars feel closer, the constellations clearer. And just before you drift off, you hear it again, a single tink, like a bell swinging once. You don't move. You just whisper to the sky, I heard you. And then you sleep, with the wind wrapped around you like a second blanket, and the past rustling just beyond the firelight. You wake to the unmistakable sound of a llama refusing to be a llama. At first, you think it's a dream, a long, slow grunt, followed by a defiant stamp of a hoof. But then there's the clatter of a wooden feeding trough flipping over and the unmistakable snorkeling noise Wirako makes when he's trying to look innocent after committing a small but meaningful crime. You sit up with a sigh, rubbing the crust from your eyes. Another peaceful morning destroyed by wool. Outside the pen, Chuki is watching the chaos unfold with the patient amusement of someone who has fully accepted that the people around her are idiots. You step into your sandals and shuffle over. Yawa is tangled in his own lead rope. Kayla has somehow found her way into a pile of stored grain, and Wirako has overturned his water basin and is now trying to drink from a puddle he made himself. You stare at them for a moment, then softly, what did I do in a past life to deserve this? No answer, just a chorus of chewing. You spend the next half hour untangling, retying, brushing out knots, and having a stern heart-to-heart with Wirako, who responds by sneezing directly onto your chest. Your cloak, already crusted with trail dust and something that smells suspiciously like fermented tuber, now carries the faint aroma of llama indignation. You look up at the sky, clear again, high-altitude blue. A few wisps of cloud stretched low, ed like old stories across the peaks. It'll be a good day for walking, eventually. First, breakfast. You're invited by one of the local boys, same one who warned you about the chicken, to share the morning meal in the communal shelter. Inside, smoke curls lazily from a central hearth, and women bustle around stirring pots, flipping flat cakes, and chatting like the world isn't built on mountains and frayed rope. You're handed a bowl of warm barley porridge, sweetened with raw honey. You nearly cry from gratitude. It's soft, gentle, and for once doesn't crunch unexpectedly. You eat quietly in the corner, letting the buzz of conversation wash over you. Someone's cousin just married a flute player. Someone else is complaining about a rogue alpaca who keeps sneaking into the squash fields and pretending to be a deity. You file that away for later. After eating, you return to the herd. The llamas are calm now, suspiciously calm. You eye Chuki. She blinks at you slowly, you sigh and start packing. The bundles today are lighter, fewer goods, more letters, and a new item, a small pouch handed to you by the village head, Sakra, wrapped in a crimson ribbon and sealed with a wax glyph shaped like a maize kernel. For the weaver at Urak Pampa, she'd said, he'll know what it's for. You didn't ask questions. You never do with sealed things, you just carry. By mid-morning, you're back on the trail, weaving your way out of the valley and onto a new stretch of road that you've only taken once before, and even then, in the opposite direction. The terrain is stranger here, less green, more twisted. You pass clusters of rock formations that rise like frozen waves, sharp-edged and scattered, the result of some ancient eruption or a very dramatic mountain tantrum. The llamas are tense again, not afraid exactly, just annoyed. They stumble more, they sniff everything twice. And every so often one of them stops dead, refusing to budge, until you've poked it with your stick, begged for cooperation, and promised an extra handful of dried oke later. This is how it goes. Some days they walk like gods. Other days, you begin to suspect that llamas are actually a failed celestial experiment left behind by impatient spirits. You reach a flat ridge by noon, and the view almost makes up for the chaos. To your right, the world drops away into a basin so wide it seems impossible. A sea of grass ripples in the wind, dotted with tiny specks of white, probably other herds moving like woolly clouds. To your left, the mountains rise sharp and grey, cliffs stacked like jagged teeth. Somewhere in there is a cave the old stories call Hatun Wakai, the Big Cry, a sacred place or a cursed one, depending on who's telling the tale. Historians still argue whether it was used for rituals or exile. Some even think it was a mine, long lost. Others say it weeps when the sky does. You don't plan to visit. You've cried enough on this road without needing assistance. You let the llamas rest near the edge of the ridge, giving them time to graze while you chew on dried meat and drink from your flask. The wind here is strong and constant, snapping your cloak around your legs like a flag of vague resignation. You spot something in the dirt, a flattened circle of stones arranged in a spiral. It's a message. You kneel to read it. The spiral flows clockwise, center stones slightly raised, 3 pebbles beside it, each spaced evenly apart. Translation: watch your step. Landslide 2 turns ahead. You nod, tip your fingers in thanks to whoever left it, and drop a leaf beside the center stone in return. This is how road keepers talk. No ink, no letters, just stones, rhythm, and trust. You pack up and continue. Sure enough, 2 bends later, the trail narrows and shows clear signs of recent collapse. The earth has slumped away in chunks, leaving just enough of a path to cross single file. You go first, carefully, boots placed with exaggerated precision. The llamas follow, some pausing to sniff the edge as if measuring the drop with their egos. Everyone makes it across. No disasters, just the usual collection of panic sweat and gratitude prayers. By late afternoon, the path widens again. The sun tilts lower. You spot a weathered sign carved into a tree stump. 3 lines, no words. It means there's shelter ahead. You pick up the pace. The shelter is exactly as remembered, a low stone wall, a crude thatch roof patched with old cloth, and a carved seat that is somehow always damp, even in dry season. You make camp. You light a small fire. You unpack a little bundle of dried peach sakra snuck into your pack. You smile, slice it carefully, and share the pieces with the herd. Except Yawa, he tried to bite you during the crossing. He gets none. Night falls slow and wide, blanketing the hills with quiet. You lie back. The stars blink into being, one by one. You let the silence settle over you, until... Ftyapt! Kayla again. You groan. The quiet life of a llama keeper, always just one step from peace. The fire crackles softly beside you, a fading companion against the growing dark. The wind dances low through the valley like it's practicing an old lullaby, never quite finishing the tune, but humming enough of it to make you yawn. You shift beneath your blanket, watching the stars wheel overhead. Some nights they feel like distant gossipers whispering about your life. Other nights they're just cold pinholes in a fabric you're not allowed to touch. Tonight, Tonight they're kind, gentle, curious. The llamas are already asleep. You can tell by the way Chuki's legs are tucked under, like folded laundry, and Kayla is snoring in a way that sounds disturbingly human. Wirako lies, stretched across the remains of your cloak, looking like a shaggy sausage with legs. You let out a long breath and close your eyes, then, from somewhere not too far off, a crack, not sharp, not close, but loud enough to lift your head. You sit up slowly. The fire sputters, the wind stops humming. You reach for your walking stick, not because you plan to fight anything, but because holding it makes you feel 12% more competent. Another crack. This time, followed by what sounds like a short shuffle. A rock dislodging, something heavy moving with care. You rise, dust sticking to your blanket. You leave the fire, you walk slowly toward the edge of the camp. Then, from behind, a low rise, a voice. Not a ghost. Not a whisper. A real voice. "Oh there! Llama Keeper!" You blink. A figure appears over the slope, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in layers of traveler's wool and carrying a bundle on their back, large enough to make a llama jealous. They raise a hand. "Friendly." You don't relax yet. Friendly can mean a lot of things. The figure laughs. It's a warm sound. "I've got 2 sacks of dried fish and a cracked flute. If I meant harm, I'd be a very confused bandit." You smile, just slightly. "Come on in." He approaches, careful not to spook the herd. You guide him to the fire and offer a seat on a large, flat stone that has seen many stories before his. He sets down his bundle with a grunt, stretches his shoulders, and sighs like someone who hasn't had a conversation in several weeks. You hand him a bit of dried peach. He accepts like it's gold. "My name's Atok," he says between chews. "Courier from the coast." You nod. "Figured from the smell." He raises a brow. "Salt and fish oil," you clarify. "Ah," he chuckles. "Better than my last nickname. Someone once called me Walking Anchovy." You both laugh, and the tension eases. Over the next hour, you swap the usual. Trail news, weather patterns, food rumors. He confirms your earlier gossip, Spanish coins in the southern valleys, sun priests doubling their processions, and rumors of giant ships spotted on the coast that look like mountains made of wood. "Monsters?" you ask. He shakes his head. "People, just very strange ones." You stare at the fire. "You ever see one?" "No," he says, voice softer now. "But I saw a boy who had." You glance at him. "He said they didn't speak our tongue. They wore metal. Pale faces. He thought they were ghosts." You both sit in silence. The fire pops. "I don't think they're ghosts," Atok says finally. "But I don't think they're just men either." You nod once. "The world's getting bigger. Or we're finally realizing how small we are." You poke the fire gently, sending sparks into the air like tiny fireflies. "What's in your bundle?" you ask. "Letters," he says, "and a fishbone carved with a story." You glance at him. "I'm serious," he says. "It's from a storyteller who doesn't write. He carves his words into bone, then sends them inland." "Why?" Atok shrugs. "Says words live longer when they're harder to carry." You think about that for a long time. Later, he curls into his own blanket beside the fire. You lie back down on your side. The stars are brighter now. The wind has returned to its whispering. You dream lightly of cracked flutes, bone-carved tails, and ships with teeth made of gold. At dawn, Atok is already up. You share a quick meal of barley cakes and herbs, check your respective packs, and prepare to part ways. "You heading to Yurak Pampa?" he asks. You nod. He points west. "Then don't take the southern pass. Too much melt from last week. The path there bites." You thank him. He hoists his pack. "May your llamas stay awake and your boots stay tied." You grin. "And may your fish not leak through your bundle." He chuckles and walks off, vanishing around a bend before the sun is fully up. You gather the herd. The morning is crisp, with clouds like stretched cotton above the peaks. You tie the pouches tight, check your straps, then you do something you rarely do. You sing just a little tune. A silly one, a walking song you haven't sung since childhood. The llamas seem surprised. Chuki, Huki snorts. Kayla hums back, and Wirako begins marching in rhythm like he's suddenly part of a parade. You smile and walk because the trail calls, and today at least you have company in your bones. The sun crests the mountain's edge in a burst of gold, spilling light down the slopes like someone upended a pot of liquid fire over the world. You squint into the brilliance, lifting your hand to shade your face, and your breath fogs slightly in the cool air. Behind you, the herd stretches and stirs. Kayla is pawing at the dirt, as though she's discovered a secret tunnel. Wirako's already halfway through your emergency snack pouch, and Chuki is sitting on your cloak again. Because of course she is. You take it all in with a tired smirk. It's a new day, and the trail to Urak Pampa waits. The village lies west of your current path, along a route that's rarely used this time of year. Most couriers choose the southern pass, faster, flatter, but prone to sudden washouts from melting snow. You were going to try it until Atok warned you. Now, you're trusting his advice and taking the older, higher path. It hugs the mountain ridge like a nervous child clinging to its mother's skirt. Less travelled, yes. But old roads have their own kind of wisdom. And honestly, if it means fewer snake pits and collapsing bridges, you'll take the scenic route. The climb begins gently. You hum again, soft, tuneless, a habit that keeps your breath steady. The llamas follow without complaint. Even Chuki doesn't protest when the trail narrows into a dusty spine between rock faces. She simply stares at the drop with her usual "I dare you" energy and continues on. The air grows cooler, higher. You chew another coca leaf, letting it settle into your tongue like a slow-spreading sun. Your fingers are starting to stiffen, so you keep them moving, flicking a pebble now and then or adjusting your belt. Anything to keep the blood awake. Midday arrives with little warning. You pause at a bend in the ridge and look out. Below you, the valley spreads like a green quilt, stitched together with terraces, crooked trails, and glinting streams. A hawk circles far below, its wings carving spirals into the silence. You sit for a moment, legs dangling over the edge, and breathe deep. Then you see it. Smoke. A thin wisp curling upward from the far side of the ridge, too thin to be accidental. Someone's cooking or waiting. You squint, trying to guess the distance. Maybe an hour's walk, maybe 2. Depends on whether the path decides to cooperate or throw a tantrum. You stand, stretch, and call the herd. They grumble, of course, but they follow. They always do. The trail turns rocky again, sharp stones underfoot, flanked by low shrubs and the occasional outcrop of ancient rock that seems to hum when the wind hits it just right. You pass a standing stone along the path. Weathered, cracked, but still upright. At first glance it looks like nothing, a simple marker, but then you see the carvings, faint lines chiseled in an ancient style, tracing the outline of a condor, wings stretched wide. Beneath it, a single dot. You pause. This was a marker once, a meeting point perhaps, or a warning. Historians still argue whether these condor stones marked sacred sites or were just territorial signs left by highland communities. You've heard both. Some say they map the stars, others say they tell you which direction to run if you hear singing rocks. You leave a coca leaf at its base and continue. The smoke grows clearer. Eventually you crest a small rise and see it, a stone hut, old but intact, walls mended with moss and clever hands. Outside, a fire burns in a shallow pit, and beside it, someone sits. You approach slowly. The figure looks up, middle-aged, weathered, hair pulled back in a braid so tight it could deflect arrows. They nod once. "Courier?" they ask. You nod back. "Llama keeper." They gesture toward the fire. "Food's warm, trail's cold." You sit. They ladle a thick stew into a clay bowl and pass it to you. It smells of herbs, onions, and some root you can't quite name. You eat with a flat stone spoon, letting the warmth chase the mountain wind from your chest. "I'm Rimac," the person says. "Caretaker." You raise an eyebrow. Of what? They gesture at the hut. This shelter, this ridge. Sometimes lost travelers, sometimes stories. You sip the broth. Busy job, Rimac chuckles. Only when people remember we're here. You exchange trail updates. Rimac confirms the path ahead is clear, save for one washed-out bridge. But there's a fallen log across it now. Looks sketchy, holds fine. You nod. Sketchy but fine. Sounds like most of my life. You finish your bowl, thank them, and leave a bit of dried fruit in the shared food jar. Tradition. You step back on the trail. Llamas Pampa is just over the next 2 hills, if memory serves. You walk. The afternoon sun blazes from above, not warmly, but with that smug intensity only high-altitude light can manage. Your shoulders cook. Your ears tingle. You mutter something rude about solar deities. The trail finally dips into a slope of loose sand and gravel, and the herd fans out, taking wider steps, tails flicking, ears perked forward. They know. They smell it. Llamas Pampa is near. Sure enough, the first rooftops appear, clustered near a small creek that gleams like silver thread. Stone homes, cloth flags, a few women by the stream washing blankets and tossing jokes at each other. You pass the threshold stone, and the village welcomes you like an old friend, quiet, steady, with the kind of calm that only comes from knowing you've seen empires rise and fall, and your tuber harvest is still more important. You make your way to the weaver's home. You've never met him, but you ask a child, spinning a top made of old gourd. She points. Second house, smells like mint and burned thread. You knock once. The door creaks. A man answers, mid-60s, fingers like river roots, eyes that haven't missed a single moment since the empire was young. You hand him the pouch with the red ribbon. He unwraps it, examines the contents, and nods once. He says nothing, but then he pulls a small cloth from his belt and hands it to you. A gift, a woven band, simple but precise. Blue and black threads, crisscrossing, in a pattern that matches no symbol you know. You thank him, and leave. Outside, Chuki is napping in the shade. Kayla is bothering a chicken. Wirako has rolled onto his side, legs twitching in what you pray is a dream, and not some new condition. You sigh, sit, and let your feet rest for a while. The sun begins to dip, and the village settles. Another stop complete, another trail behind you, but more still ahead, always more. The sun drapes itself lazily across the rooftops of Llamas Pampa, bathing the village in soft gold. Everything glows, the terraced fields, the clay-tiled homes, even the dust that floats gently above the foot-worn streets, swirling like old spirits trying to remember where they left their sandals. You sit outside the weaver's house, letting your legs stretch and your cloak breathe. The woven band he gave you lies in your hand, its pattern hypnotic, its purpose a mystery. You trace the threads with your thumb, wondering what story they tell. Llamas munch contentedly nearby. Wirako tries to eat a flower, again. Kayla is eyeing someone's laundry line like it's a fashion boutique. And Chuki, she's staring at the mountains. You glance at her. Don't worry, you mutter. We'll climb again soon. She doesn't blink, just keeps staring. You tuck the band into your pouch and stand. There's still light left, and you know from long habit that the best time to move is right before twilight. When the wind dies down, the sun stops trying to roast you alive, and the trails go quiet. You've got about an hour's walk before the next resting shelter. You gather the herd, thank the weaver silently with a nod, and step back onto the path. The trail west from Llamas Pampa is gentler, almost suspiciously so. It rolls across the high plateau like a meandering thought, occasionally edged by ancient stone borders too broken to fence anything, but too stubborn to fall completely. You walk in silence, the kind of silence that presses soft against your skin, like wool soaked in moonlight. And as you walk, you start to notice them. The towers. Small ones at first, just stubs of stone rising from the earth at odd angles. Then taller, more defined. Cylindrical structures spaced along the ridges. Chulpas. Burial towers, some say they held nobility. Others claim they housed entire family lineages curled together like roots in the dark. Historians still argue whether the chulpas were spiritual sanctuaries, status symbols, or just very elaborate tombstones designed by someone who really hated rectangular shapes. You approach one slowly. The door is narrow, too short for a full-grown person. You crouch and peek in. Inside, darkness. Still. Cold. The kind that clings to your cheeks and whispers about how long it's been since sunlight lived in there. You leave a coca leaf at the entrance. Not because you believe anyone inside will use it, but because you're polite. And in the mountains, manners matter. The llamas pause too, which is strange. They usually walk right past burial sites without so much as a snort. But here, they stop and wait. You watch them. Then Chuki lets out a single, low grunt, and they move on. As do you. The chulpas dot the landscape for another mile, like a row of silent watchers tracing your steps. Eventually, the trail curves away, hugging a shallow ravine lined with thick moss and a few twisted trees clinging desperately to the slope. You walk carefully, watching your footing, mindful of sudden slips and overly curious llamas. The shelter comes into view just as the sun kisses the last ridge. It's better than expected. 3 walls, a thatched roof, and a wooden platform raised just high enough to keep you from sleeping in someone else's hoofprint. You unpack quickly, rope the herd nearby, and light a fire using the small stash of tinder hidden in a hollow stone, left by someone thoughtful. You'll leave more before you go. The flames bloom quietly, flickering orange and blue. The smoke curls upward, brushing the underside of the roof and slipping through the hole above like a lazy ghost. You sit, stretch your aching legs and unwrap your dinner. Tonight's feast: roasted corn, a handful of dried meat, and 2 of those overly optimistic purple berries that sometimes taste like sugar and sometimes taste like regret. The first one is fine. The second one, well, you make a face. Even the fire looks mildly concerned. As night blankets the plateau, the wind picks up, tugging at your hair and cloak. You wrap yourself tighter, listen to the llamas settling down and let your mind wander. Back to the band the weaver gave you. You pull it from your pouch again, unroll it, and examine it under firelight. The pattern seems simple, crossed lines, alternating blues and blacks, but the more you stare, the more the shapes shift. You begin to see something else. A bird, then a mountain, then oddly, a bell. You blink, rub your eyes. The pattern returns to normal. You sigh. Trail fatigue, probably? Or just trail magic. You tuck it away again, lie back on your pack, and let the fire warm one side of your face. The stars begin their slow reveal, indifferent and endless. You spot a few familiar ones. The llama, of course, always overhead. The celestial slinger, the one who flings stones across the sky to wake sleeping gods. And that strange little cluster you once mistook for a cluster of fleas, but later learned was actually revered as the sneeze of the moon, which tracks, honestly. The wind hums through the trees like a mother rocking a cradle. You begin to drift. Then, just before sleep takes you, a sound, not loud, not startling. Just the faintest jingle, a bell, one soft clink, so subtle you almost think you imagined it. You sit up slowly. The llamas are all in place. No movement, no wind. The fire crackles. You listen hard. Nothing. You lie back down, slower this time. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe it wasn't. You smile into the dark, because if the bell's still following you, it must think you're worth watching. And honestly, you don't mind the company. You wake to frost, curling over the inside of your nostrils. There's no sun yet, just the thinnest light creeping along the eastern edge of the sky, like the world is drawing back the curtain with great reluctance. You lie still for a while, swaddled in llama wool and aches, listening to the silence of the high plateau. Then Chuki sneezes directly into the fire pit. A soft burst of ash erupts upward like a disappointed volcano. Good morning. You groan and roll upright, joints snapping like old cornstalks in the wind. Your breath puffs in thick clouds. Kayla is already up, stretching her neck in that long, deliberate way that screams, "I slept better than you." Wirako is chewing your sandal. Again. "Why?" you mutter. "Is it always you?" He doesn't answer, just looks at you with that vaguely smug expression unique to large herbivores and small children who've figured out how to unlock cupboards. You drag yourself to your feet. Today's trail is long, narrow, and allegedly haunted by a spirit who sings lullabies to lost travelers. You're not worried. You have bigger problems. Your boots are beginning to split at the seam. Still, your job's simple. Make the drop in Calca Canyon. By dusk, check for any inbound messages or bundles, and, if the stars are kind, rest near one of the old imperial markers. They usually attract birds, which means eggs. And frankly, you'd consider throwing hands with a condor at this point for a soft-boiled breakfast. You break camp quickly, warm up with coca leaf, a tight stretch, and a whispered prayer to the spirit of unblistered feet. The trail begins as a thin line across the slope, then climbs sharply into a zigzag so tight you lose sight of your own llamas every time you round a bend. You call to them with short clicks, the ones you learned as a child, passed down from your grandfather who swore each syllable had been blessed by the gods of stubborn animals. You reach the ridge, and there it is, the road that earned its name long before the empire had an emperor, Hatun Nyan, the Great Path. It's older than kings, older than kingdoms. And here, etched into the rock itself, you can still see the wear left by thousands, millions of sandaled feet that passed this way. You run your fingers along the grooves. These marks don't belong to glory-hungry generals or feathered priests. These are the tracks of those like you, messengers, farmers, porters, traders. People who carried the real weight of the world on backs in baskets, and through boots that, much like yours, were held together by equal parts faith and spit. Historians still debate who exactly first carved this section of the trail, but most agree it was done without the use of metal tools, just stone, water, and an unreasonable amount of time. You adjust your pack, nudge Wirako back into motion, and step onto the old road. It's like walking into a memory you never made. And yet, everything feels familiar. Birdsong, the rustle of wind in the ichu grass, the way the earth hums just beneath your soles. By midday, the sun has crested the ridge and begun its daily campaign of blistering your shoulders. You pause near a narrow bend where a small shrine stands carved into the rock. Inside, a figurine, a human form with a llama head, someone's sense of humor, or a local deity with very specific branding. You leave a pebble at the foot of the statue anyway, for luck. The next stretch is rough. The path slips downward into Calca Canyon, narrowing so tightly at one point that even Chuki hesitates, lifting one dainty hoof and setting it back down like she's reconsidering her entire career. You coax them through with soft words, steady steps, and one emergency potato. Finally, the canyon floor opens up, a flat stretch of stone flanked by high cliffs and wind-worn alcoves. In the center, a carved platform, clearly ancient, maybe pre-Inca, maybe built by the same hands that traced the stars across the first quipu chords. This is the drop point. You approach cautiously, eyes scanning the ledges. It's not danger you're worried about, it's inspectors, or worse, bureaucrats. The kind who ask questions like, "Why is this bundle late?" or "Did you sign the copper slip?" Luckily, no one's here. You place the woven satchel from Urak Pampa on the platform, securing it with a loop of rope and a carved stone weight. Then you turn to go. But something catches your eye. Tucked behind the altar stone, half hidden in the crevice, is a rolled cloth, dyed deep red, with a white feather tied to the cord. Curious, you pull it free and unravel it slowly. Inside, a quipu, not a big one, just a few cords, but the colors are strange, black, indigo, pale green, and the knots arranged in a pattern you haven't seen before. You run your fingers over it. This isn't a tax record, it's a message. You can't read all of it. Your training only goes so far, but one phrase stands out, formed in the spacing and tension. Do not trust the white-faced men. You blink, sit back, let the cord fall into your lap. Somewhere above, a hawk cries. You stare at the knots. Was this meant for someone else, or anyone who would understand? You wrap the quipu carefully, tuck it into your pouch and stand slowly. Chuki eyes you. You nod. We're moving. And you do. Climb back up the path, the trail now bathed in late afternoon gold. The light makes the dust look like it's glowing. Your legs ache. Your boots are one bad step from betrayal, but your mind is racing. You don't know who tied that message, but it's old and serious and left for someone who walks the old roads, someone like you. You climb out of the canyon like a beetle hauling a sack of boulders, every muscle in your leg staging a polite but firm protest. The quipu in your pouch shifts with each step, its knots pressing softly against your side like a secret trying to whisper. By the time you crest the final rise, the sun is low and bronze, flattening the mountains into giant sleeping animals. The llamas are unusually quiet. Chuki trudges without her usual commentary. Kayla hasn't tried to chew your braid once, and even Wirako seems contemplative, staring off into the distance like he's just remembered a past life as an accountant. You find a sheltered hollow just past the ridge, a flat patch of ground, stone circle already built, someone's camp long forgotten. You smile. Sometimes the road remembers you. You settle the herd, tie the leads loosely to the old anchor stones, and build a small fire from twigs and half-burnt branches left in a cracked gourd. Generosity from a stranger, the kind that warms twice. As the flames catch, you pull out the quipu again. You unroll it carefully, lay it across your lap. The cords glisten in the firelight, soaked with time, softened with handling. You trace the knots, black, indigo, pale green, and then a final cord, soft yellow, with no knots at all, empty, waiting. You lean back against your pack. The stars are coming out again. You recognize the llama constellation first, its head tilted, legs stretched behind like it's running across the heavens, forever late for something cosmic. The tail points toward the Southern Cross. The nose dips toward a group of stars, you were told, once, represents a pot of soup. A good sky, a familiar one. You stare at the empty yellow cord, and you tie a knot, just one. A simple marker, nothing fancy, but it's yours. You tuck the quipu back into your pouch, and you feel it. A small change, like you've picked up someone else's thread and woven yourself into a story already in motion. Later, as sleep pulls you gently down, you remember something the old priest in Chinche Suyu once told you, half drunk on fermented maize and full of unsolicited wisdom. Messages left too long turn to warnings. Warnings left too long turn to ghosts. You chuckled at the time. Now you wonder. In the dream that finds you, you are not walking. You are flying, not on wings, but on the breath of the mountains high above the trail. Below you see the llamas like white stones moving through grass, and you, smaller than an ant, carrying a pouch full of history. You fly over rivers, over broken bridges, over ruins lost to memory. Then the wind shifts. You see a ship, massive, wooden, alien, crawling toward the coast with sails like spider webs and men on deck wearing silver skins. They're laughing. You try to scream, but in the dream your mouth is sewn shut with golden thread. You wake with a jolt. The fire has died down to embers. The wind has picked up. The sky, still dark, glows slightly at the horizon. Almost dawn. You sit up slowly, feeling the cold bite your cheeks. The llamas are stirring. You boil a little water, chew a root. Get moving before the chill has time to settle in your bones. Today's leg takes you across another stretch of the old road. This one flanked by stone walls carved in the old style. Huge slabs fitted together without mortar, so tight not even a thread could pass between them. Engineers still marvel at these walls, how they were cut, shaped, and placed so precisely, without iron, without wheels, without machines. Some say aliens, others say sheer determination and 1,000 years of practice. You prefer the second explanation. Aliens wouldn't have had the patience. You pass 2 abandoned tambos, rest stations, long since fallen to time. The first is barely more than a rectangle of stones, half swallowed by grass. The second still has a roof, slanted and patched with bark. You pause there, let the herd rest. Run your fingers across the inside wall. You feel names carved faintly into the stone: messengers, keepers, walkers. Their marks left behind not for glory but for company. You add yours with the tip of your knife, a small curve, a swirl, the symbol your grandfather taught you. It means carried, not broken. You whisper it too, because saying it matters. You step back onto the road. The trail dips again, narrowing through a grove of twisted trees with roots like claws and moss that smells of rain and ghosts. You pass through quickly, ignoring the soft hoots and sudden gusts that tug at your hood. Some places aren't meant for lingering. The path finally opens onto a high plain dotted with low stone circles. Here, the grass is short and windswept. There's a shrine ahead, different from the others. Simpler, just 3 stones stacked like a chair without a seat. You approach, place your hand on the top stone, and feel warmth, not from the sun, from inside. The stone is warm, you pull your hand back, the air is silent, then a single gust, and a low tone like a distant horn. You turn, nothing, just sky. You exhale, and whisper, not yet, then walk, because something is following, not dangerous, not yet, but watching, measuring, and somewhere behind you, the empty knot on that yellow cord waits to become something more. The wind stiffens as the morning matures, tugging at your cloak with sharp fingers and whispering nonsense through the seams. You tighten your belt, lean into the slope and press forward. The path ahead zigzags across open country, a ridge-to-ridge trail carved by footsteps far older than yours, worn smooth by centuries of calloused feet and weathered hooves. Behind you, the llamas plod along without complaint. Chuki leads, ears twitching but purposeful. Kyla chews something that is definitely not food, and Wirako, well, he's having a moment with a butterfly. The insect flits just out of reach, and Wirako is utterly convinced it's a personal attack. He lunges, misses, stumbles, looks wounded in pride. You keep walking. The land flattens into a gentle rise, a mesa of sorts, surrounded on all sides by distant valleys and jagged blue peaks. Here the grass grows close to the ground, peppered with wildflowers that dance like they're being paid for it. The trail divides briefly at a cairn shaped like a llama's head. You pause. Left path leads toward the river bend, an unknown shortcut. Right path skirts higher ground, longer but safer. You chew on a strip of dried tawi and think. The shortcut is tempting, the road looks smoother. But your instincts, those old sandaled nerves passed down from generations of llama keepers who knew the rhythm of mountains, whisper caution. You nod to yourself and choose the long path. And not 5 minutes later you see why. Below, near the river bend, a slide, fresh, muddy, and eager. The shortcut has collapsed, trails swallowed by earth and water. Your llamas grunt approvingly at your decision, as if they were the ones who chose wisely. You do not correct them. The longer path cuts across a ledge flanked by stacked stone, some deliberate, some tumbled by time. The wall on your left was once part of a fortress or watchpoint. Historians still debate its purpose. Some say it was a checkpoint for regional governors. Others argue it was a sacred marker to realign celestial rituals. You suspect it was a lookout. The way the wind carries here, the view, the strategic sweep, it feels too watchful to be spiritual. Halfway through, you stop. Because someone's waiting. A man sits on a boulder near the trail. Middle-aged, weathered, a traveller by the look of him. Layers of fabric, mud-caked boots, a bone-handled knife at his hip. He's not pretending not to see you. He's just sitting, watching the same trail you're walking. You approach slowly, llamas behind you like furry bodyguards. He glances over, nods once. You return the nod. "Coming from Calca Canyon?" he asks. "Yes." He looks at your pouch. "You carry it?" You don't ask what it means. You nod once. He exhales through his nose. Then he does something strange. He reaches into his pack and pulls out a small clay tablet, roughly the size of your palm. The surface is pressed with indentations, some patterned, others scattered. It looks like a broken counting tool, but with no threads, no cords. "Take it," he says. You hesitate. Why? He shrugs. Because someone gave it to me and said to pass it along when I met the one who carries the empty knot. You freeze, then slowly, carefully accept the tablet. It's heavier than it looks. Warmer, too. You tuck it beside the kipu. The man stands. Don't go through the gullies after the next bend, he adds. Take the high rock. Why? He gives you a tired smile. Because I did, and I'm still here. He leaves without another word, disappearing over the ridge as if the mountain swallowed him. You glance at your herd. Chuki blinks slowly, then resumes walking. You follow. The trail does bend soon after, and sure enough, there's a fork. One path dips down into the gullies, shaded, mossy, winding. The other scrambles up slick stone to the high route. You do not hesitate. The high road is rough. The llamas grumble. Your legs curse you. But the air feels right. And the gullies below? You catch a glimpse as you climb. Dark water pooled strangely. A half-collapsed bridge. Shadows that don't belong to rocks. You shiver, even in the sun. At the top, the wind returns, strong, clean, laced with the sharp scent of puna flowers. You rest, drink, feed the herd, and examine the tablet. It's not Inca, you think. Not exactly. Older or stranger. The dots on it seem to pulse in your vision as if the indentations hold more than meaning, maybe memory. You trace the central ring. It feels unfinished. You wonder how many hands have carried this. You wonder how many more will. By sunset, you reach a clearing where the trail widens into a kind of natural amphitheatre. Half-circle of stone, rimmed with low walls and lichen-covered pillars. An old way station, perhaps. Or a place where messengers met under stars to pass what couldn't be spoken aloud. You camp here. No fire tonight. Too open, too still. You wrap yourself in wool, share a peach with Kayla, and let the night settle like a second skin. The stars rise like an audience. You lie back, hold the clay tablet to your chest, and say aloud to the dark, I'm listening. And something deep in the stone seems to answer, not in words, not in sound, but in stillness, as if the mountain itself has paused to exhale. And for just a moment, you are part of the breath. The mountain breath is gone by morning. In its place, wind, sharp and bracing, rattling through the amphitheatre stones and tugging at your blanket like a child needing breakfast. You sit up slowly, joints aching, hair full of small sticks and at least one confused beetle. The sky is bruised with pre-dawn pinks and blues. Overhead, a lone hawk circles, drifting in that lazy spiral that always seems to say, I know something you don't. You boil a little water, chew a bit of coca leaf, and rub your thumb over the clay tablet now stored carefully in your shoulder pouch. The dots feel different this morning. Cooler? Almost shy? You pack up camp quickly, careful not to leave any trace, just the way station's curved walls and a soft depression in the grass where you slept, like even the earth had tried to cradle you. Today's goal, reach the Salt Hills by mid-afternoon and then turn south toward Tucumaka. It's not an imperial checkpoint, just a minor village tucked between ridges, known mostly for their knack at salting things that should not be, Sally, salted. You once had a salted apple there that made you question your entire career. The trail is easy at first, a soft descent through low shrubs and gravel paths flanked by wild guinea fowl that dart across the road like headless spirits late for dinner. The llamas enjoy the view, their ears flicking with interest at every rustle. Even Wirako is behaving, which naturally is suspicious. Around mid-morning, you find a carved marker at a bend in the road. Smooth stone, cracked on one side, etched with a spiral sun and what looks like a fish with legs. You stare at it for a long while. Historians still argue whether these animal symbol stones were early navigation tools, cosmological markers, or just the prehistoric equivalent of graffiti. Either way, this one seems to be pointing south. You follow. By late morning, the trail rises again, sloping toward the Salt Hills, named not because they are salt, but because the rock here is streaked with pale veins that glint white under sunlight, shimmering like dry water. You reach the summit and pause, because there at the edge of the plateau stands a structure. It wasn't on your map. It's not in any of the oral histories you remember, but it's definitely old. A squat tower, round and narrow, about twice your height, built of tightly fitted stone blocks. No roof, just an opening at the top and a door carved in spiral patterns that seem to shift if you stare too long. Chuki snorts, ears flattening. You tie the herd to a bush and approach alone. The doorway is low. You duck inside. The light fades immediately, swallowed by thick silence. Your boots echo faintly against smooth stone. The interior is empty. No altar, no furniture, not even dust. Just stone walls and a column in the center. On that column, another quipu, hung carefully, reverently. You reach for it. It's brittle, faded, but still legible. You hold it up to the door's light and examine the knots, and then you freeze, because part of it matches the message from Kalka Canyon. Same warning, same chord pattern. And again, that phrase, do not trust the white-faced men, but below it, new knots. On a darker thread, you study them slowly and you translate what little you can. Some have already arrived. You step back, stomach tight. You look at the doorway like it might close behind you, but it doesn't. Nothing moves, no ghosts, no messengers, just the wind and the wide blue sky. You hang the quipu back on the column just as you found it, and leave. Outside, Chuki is chewing on the bush she's tied to. Kyla looks unimpressed. Wirako is watching the sky. You look too, and for a split second you swear you see something far off, near the horizon. Not a bird, not a cloud. Something tall, rigid. Sails? You blink, it's gone. You keep walking. The path south from the Salt Hills curves into a dusty valley, dotted with twisted trees and cacti that look like old men trying to remember a joke. You pass a few grazing alpaca, one of whom watches you like he's plotting a coup. The wind shifts again, brings a scent, salt, not from rock, from the village ahead. You reach Tucumarca by late afternoon. Low houses, soft smoke, children running barefoot between clay ovens. You're welcomed with a nod by an old woman sitting on an overturned barrel. Courier? She asks. You nod. Drop it with Lukey, third house on the left, the one with the goat who thinks he's a guard dog. You find it easily. The goat bleats at you like you owe him money but allows you to pass. You hand Lukey the coded message from Urak Pampa. He opens it, frowns, nods, then closes the door. You don't ask questions. You sit outside with the herd as twilight settles. A man nearby plays a flute. Badly. Someone else is roasting salted yams. And for a moment, everything feels normal again. You reach into your pouch, touch the clay tablet. Then, slowly, you untie your empty yellow cord and add a knot. Morning breaks with a vengeance, cold, loud, and irritatingly bright. The village of Tucumarca stirs around you. Chickens scream like someone told them about taxes, and the goat from yesterday is still giving you side-eye, as though you wronged him in a past life. You rise slowly, joints stiff from the salt-heavy air, and dreams that clung too tightly. The clay tablet rests in your pouch. The quipu still hums against your ribs like a second heartbeat. Today's route leads west, into the folds of the western cliffs, old imperial lands that haven't seen a road inspector in a decade. The people here don't rely on the empire much anymore. They grow, harvest, barter, and if something goes wrong, they ask the mountains first, not the officials. You respect that. You shoulder your pack, untie the herd, Chuki already chewing on something that may or may not be a sandal, and begin the climb. The trail is rough, barely a trail really. Just a suggestion in the earth, a series of hoof-worn ledges and carefully ignored signs that maybe this wasn't meant for casual use. You press on, boots scraping against grit, calves burning. The cliffs here loom overhead like ancient judges, towering rock walls streaked with mineral veins, pocked with cave mouths and ledges that look like they're waiting for someone to make one wrong step. Even the llamas are quieter, their feet land softer, their ears twitch more. By mid-morning you find the first cave. It's not on any chart, but it's clearly been used. Soot blackens the low ceiling. Bones, bird, llama, possibly human, lie swept into a corner, bundled in cloth so old it resembles crumbling leaves. You approach carefully. Something about the space feels tired, worn, like it's been asking to be left alone for a long time and is now too weak to protest. Inside, a series of painted symbols arc across the back wall. Llamas, spirals, a face, a tree with roots shaped like hands. You know this story. A creation myth, one not sanctioned by the imperial priests. This version says the mountains were once children, running from their father in the sky until he wept and froze them into stone. That's why the peaks are always watching, always waiting for him to stop crying and free them again. You whisper thanks, leave a coca leaf, and move on. Around midday, the trail narrows into a knife-edge ledge. You take it slowly. Chuki pretends not to be scared. Kayla hums a war song. Wirako hugs the wall like it owes him rent. Eventually, the trail dips again, and you reach a plateau. There's a building here, not large, not impressive, but still standing. It's a tampu, a rest shelter from the old days. You didn't expect one here, but the stonework's unmistakable, finely cut, mortared by time itself, arranged in that perfect jigsaw no modern hands can replicate. Even after all these years, the door still sits straight. The lintel hasn't sagged. You duck inside. It's dark, dusty, but safe. Inside, stacked carefully along the back wall, you find what no courier expects to see anymore: records. Actual honest-to-earth, knotted cord records, dozens of them, hung like scrolls on wooden pegs tagged with coloured feathers to denote region, season, and urgency. You recognize one. From the coast, marked with a white gull feather dipped in red clay. You unroll it, hands trembling slightly. The knots are newer than those from Kalka. Clear, deliberate. They came ashore, spoke no Quechua, gave gifts, took gold, laughed. You skip down the cord. Some said they were gods, some said they were men, some said they were death. You swallow. Even Wirako peers through the doorway, as if sensing the shift in your breath. You hang the cord back up, but before you leave, you notice something else. A second row of cords, newer still, probably added by local runners or waykeepers. This one reads, Messenger needed, intercept northern thread, deliver to Sacred Lake, leave at Chinchani Stone. Your skin tingles, because you know that route. Sacred Lake sits high beyond the western ridges, fed by glaciers, flanked by ruins. Even the Empire doesn't map. The Chinchani Stone is older than the calendar, older than memory. And someone needs that message delivered. You reach into your pouch, slide out the quipu from Kalka. Then, slowly, you remove the clay tablet. And something odd happens. The cords shift. The knots seem to respond to the tablet, curling slightly, aligning as if drawn by silent gravity. You don't breathe. You don't blink. Then it stops. But in the center, where the quipu touched the tablet, you notice a change, a small symbol, pressed lightly into the cord's fiber. It wasn't there before, a circle within a square. You've seen it only once before, carved into a sun priest's staff in Cuzco. They said it meant arrival. You step outside. The sun has shifted. Clouds gather in the east, thin, like waiting sails. You adjust your pack, nod to Chuki, and begin walking toward the Sacred Lake, because now this isn't just a route. It's a message someone wants delivered. And if you're reading the signs right, you might be one of the last ones who can. You press westward. The air here is thinner, sharper around the edges, like the mountain is testing you with every breath. Even the llamas seem more serious. Chuki keeps her eyes ahead. Kayla doesn't try to chew anything for half a day, and Wirako hums in a low, thoughtful tone, like he's composing a poem about existential dread. and moss. The trail thins again, then disappears entirely. This stretch isn't a road, it's a memory of a road, scraped into the earth by generations of feet, flattened by hooves, wind, and time. You follow it carefully, scanning for the old indicators, rocks that lean too deliberately, grass that parts unnaturally, cairns with 3 stones stacked instead of 2. The sacred lake lies ahead, still hours away, hidden behind ridgelines and cloud shadows.
You've
never been there, not really. Only heard stories. Runners speak of its stillness, how the air turns soft there, how even the birds grow quiet, as if the sky itself holds its breath. You crest a saddle between peaks and pause. Below you, the land falls away into a sweeping basin of black rock and blooming puna grass. The wind shifts, brushing your face with the scent of ice and soil, so old it remembers stars before fire. You begin the descent slowly, 1 foot at a time, boots sliding slightly. You reach a shelf of stone where a tiny shrine sits. Nothing grand, just a triangle of rocks with a bone flute resting on top. There's no offering bowl, no cloth, no feather. But there's a sound, faint, fluttering, music, except it's not from the flute. It's coming from the wind. You freeze, listening. It's just there, a handful of notes, not repeated, not melodic, but intentional, like someone humming through a dream. You glance behind. Nothing but your herd and a slowly tilting sun. Right, you mutter. Definitely not weird at all. The trail steepens again. You let the llamas take it slow, guiding them carefully over loose gravel and slick patches of old lichen. The air grows colder, clouds drift low, grazing your shoulders like lazy ghosts. Then you see it, the sacred lake. It reveals itself like a held breath. 1 second, it's hidden behind a ridge. The next, it's simply there, a wide, perfect oval of water, smooth as obsidian, reflecting the sky in shades too deep to name. No ripples, no birds, no insects, just stillness. And on the far side, barely visible, a massive standing stone. Rough-hewn, taller than 2 men, leaning slightly as if listening. The Chinchani stone. You take a slow, involuntary step forward. The herd follows, hooves hushed against the earth. You make your way around the lake's edge, feeling the silence settle heavier with every stride. Even your breath seems muffled. Closer, closer, until you stand before the stone. It towers above you, its surface pocked by age, its base surrounded by faded offerings, woven bracelets, cracked gourds, old bone charms, dried leaves now turned to whisper thin curls. You kneel. Slide the quipu from your pouch. Unroll it gently. Place it at the base of the stone. Then the clay tablet. Then the new cord with your 2 simple knots. One at Yurak Pampa, one in Tucumaka. You sit back on your heels and wait. There's no thunder, no voice, no divine llama with glowing eyes descending from the sky. But a breeze picks up, only it doesn't touch your face. It touches the stone. You see it, dust lifting. The quipu threads flutter. The clay tablet hums in your palm just for a second. Then it stops. You stare and notice something strange. The knots on the original quipu have changed, only slightly. Not undone, but shifted. 1 knot now loops a bit tighter. Another elongated, like it's waiting to be read again. You're not sure how, you're not sure why, but someone or something heard you. Chuki snorts behind you. Kayla drops to her knees and starts rolling around in the grass like she's celebrating an obscure llama holiday. Wirako just sighs and lies down. You join them. Lie back on the cold ground. Stare up at a sky that feels suddenly closer. Historians still argue whether the sacred lake ever functioned as a true message point, an echo chamber of the gods or a meeting place of the runner priests. Some say it was myth. Others say it's merely beautiful. But you've seen too much not to wonder. You drift off for a while, not quite sleep, not quite waking, somewhere in between where dreams tangle around memory and time melts like candle wax. When you stir, the shadows are long and the sky is turned to gold. You rise, check the quipu 1 more time, still changed, still humming faintly like a thread tied directly to the pulse of the earth. You pack it, sling your pouch over your shoulder, and glance back at the Chinchani stone. It leans, just slightly, as if bowing. You nod, then turn, because someone else needs to hear this story, and you're still the one carrying it. You head east again, reluctantly. The sacred lake sits behind you like a dream you're scared to forget. Every few steps you're tempted to turn around. Not because you left something, but because you feel something stayed. The quipu is heavier now, not physically, it's still just thread and knots and old meaning, but every time it brushes your side, you feel the weight of that altered pattern, like it's aware, like it's watching the road with you. The herd is quiet. Chuki walks close today, not leading, not lagging, just near, as if guarding your thoughts. Kayla keeps nudging your hand with her nose, like she's checking to make sure you're really still here. And Wirako stepped in a puddle earlier and is being emotionally fragile about it. The trail east forks into two familiar options, the high ridge path, scenic but exhausting, or the lower gorge trail, darker, faster, and, according to local myth, super haunted. You pick the gorge. Why? Because you're tired, and maybe because you're curious. The path narrows into the kind of terrain only couriers, goats, and truly lost travelers ever find themselves in. Slopes pressed between rock walls, trickles of cold water weaving across the trail, mossy stones that make every step a gamble. The light thins quickly here, even in daylight. The cliffs rise on either side, blotting out the sun in uneven chunks. It's like walking through the mouth of a sleeping giant, teeth replaced by roots and ferns. And that's when you hear it, whistling, very faint, not a bird, not the wind, a human tune, soft, wandering, tuneless, like someone forgot what they were singing halfway through and just committed to the vibe. You freeze, not because it's threatening, but because it's old. The tune scratches at the back of your memory like a familiar scent. You've heard it before, years ago in the high valleys with your grandfather. He used to whistle it when sorting coca leaves. Said it was something his grandfather had taught him. You take a few cautious steps, and there, sitting cross-legged on a stone, is a man, no older than 40, wearing a messenger's sash, tattered, sun-bleached, but unmistakable. He doesn't look at you, just keeps whistling, until you're close enough to speak. Your route? You ask. The traditional courier greeting. He smiles slightly. Lost it. Where from? He shrugs. South Coast? Long time ago. You nod, and for a moment you both say nothing. Then he points to your pouch. You've got one. I do. He nods again, more to himself than to you. Good, he says. That's good. You ask nothing more, because the rules on the trail are simple. If someone is sitting still, not bleeding, not calling for help, they've chosen their pause. You respect it. You offer him some dried fruit. He accepts. You walk on. His whistling fades behind you, replaced by silence that seems quieter now, like something sacred has been acknowledged. By late afternoon, the gorge widens and the sun returns. You emerge into a bowl of land ringed by wild bushes and worn terraces, long abandoned. You rest near an old storehouse, its walls collapsed inward, like it exhaled a little too hard. You unpack, slowly. The clay tablet rests beside you. You unwrap the quipu again. The new symbol, the circle in the square, seems slightly darker than before, not in color, but in presence, like it's waiting for something or someone. You close your eyes, and then softly, your hand reaches for the cord, and you tie a third knot. No reason, no prompt, just a feeling. As you finish, the wind shifts. You glance up. There, at the far edge of the plain, another courier is approaching, slowly, deliberately. It's a woman this time, tall, wrapped in a blue cloak with a jagged staff carved with mountain glyphs. She stops a few meters away. You've seen it? She asks. You nod. The lake? You nod again. She walks closer, sits beside you, unrolls her quipu. The pattern is different, but the threads are the same color. indigo, black, pale green, and on the final cord, the same yellow thread. But hers already has 4 knots. She sees yours, smiles faintly. We're not the only ones, she says, and you feel something in your spine shift. Not fear, not dread, but momentum. As if the road beneath you isn't a path anymore, but a pull. She stands again. North, for me, she says. You point east. She nods. Keep it safe. You too? And then she's gone. Just like that. You lie back in the grass, the quipu cradled against your chest, and you whisper to no one in particular, I think we're being gathered. No one answers. But the wind rustles through the grass like 1,000 tiny nods. The grass is damp with morning when you rise, and your breath leaves short clouds in the chilled air. The night was strangely peaceful. No dreams, no midnight llama complaints, not even Wirako's usual 3 a.m. existential groaning. Just the quiet of an open plain that hasn't been disturbed in decades. You pack slowly. Your hands move on their own, tying straps, rolling cloth, checking your pouch 3 times as if the quipu might sprout legs and make a run for it. The yellow cord now holds 3 knots, each one a decision, each one a breadcrumb on a trail you didn't know you were following. The clay tablet lies still at the bottom of the pouch. You haven't touched it since the sacred lake, but you can feel it there, like a silent passenger just waiting for the right station. You set off east toward the low pass that leads to the valley of smoke. It's not volcanic, just named for the way the mists gather there, rising each morning like incense from a stone altar. It's also said to be where old messengers go to disappear, although that may just be something young people say to keep kids from exploring Wesi without a torch. As you climb the first hill, your herd follows with unusual discipline, Chuki in front, Kyla alert, Wirako surprisingly chipper. You make a mental note to check his water pouch later. He might have found some fermented maize mash and self-medicated. The pass curves around a spine of rock that juts out like a broken tooth. There you find a carving you've never seen before, newer than the others, freshly etched. A spiral, a handprint, a single knot. It matches the shape of yours. You stare at it a while. Then place your hand over the carving. Your fingers fit perfectly. Someone else has been here, recently. The path narrows, the fog rising with each step. The valley of smoke welcomes you without a sound, wrapping your cloak in cold mist and dampening your footfalls until you feel like you're walking inside a secret. You find another marker, this one older, stone piled into the shape of a sleeping cat with a quipu tied around its neck like a collar. The knots are frayed, half gone. You reach out, adjust one, and feel it loosen, untying, as if grateful to be read again. The message? Too late? Or just early? Cryptic, possibly sarcastic, definitely from a fellow courier. You press on. By midday, you find the ruins of an old tampu, shelter stone walls, broken pottery, and what's unmistakably an old fire pit. You pause here for food, chew a bit of charqui, and let the llamas nibble on moss. The fog is thick now, but not oppressive. Just quiet. You unwrap the quipu again, trace your fingers over the cords, and then for the first time, you listen. You don't know how, you don't know why it works. But the moment your fingers stop moving, the quipu feels like it's humming against your skin. Not noise, not speech. Just rhythm. Like a heartbeat. And in that rhythm, a pattern, a message, one you didn't notice before. The black cord, the one you thought was just a date marker, has a cluster of tight loops near the middle. And now you understand they form a glyph, a place name, one you've only heard once before, Pakari Tampu, the Gate of Dawn. A place most think is myth, a village swallowed by time and cloud, said to be where the first people came into the world, guided by the sun. Some scholars claim it was just symbolic, others insist it existed once, high in the Sierra, hidden by mist and the memory of the earth itself. You exhale sharply, that's where it's pointing. Not just the quipu, not just the tablet, but everything. Your steps, your choices, your knots, all pulling you toward that place. You pack up quickly, whistle to the herd, and begin moving again. Now each ridge feels like a chapter, each pass a breath. Each stone underfoot a confirmation. Even the clouds seem to part for a moment, showing the peaks ahead, tall, jagged, and shining faintly with snow. You know where to go now, and for once, you're not guessing. You follow the trail higher, past an abandoned shrine with a fox skull hanging from a branch, past a whispering stream that murmurs words you can't quite hear, past a stone circle filled with footprints that haven't faded, though no one has lived here for years. Night falls before you reach the next camp, but you don't stop. You light a torch, guide the llamas by the soft flicker. You have to reach the ridge. Something's waiting, and when you do, just as the stars burst overhead, you see it. Far below, nestled in a cradle of stone and starlight, a faint outline, a ring of structures, barely visible, but real. Pakaritampu, the gate of dawn. You feel your knees go weak. You sink to the ground, and in that moment, the quipu shifts again. The fourth knot begins to form itself. The descent into Pakaritampu begins with silence. Not the empty kind, but the deep, ancient hush that clings to places older than language. Every step you take feels muffled, absorbed by the earth as though the mountain itself is listening. The torch in your hand flickers dimly before you snuff it out. Moonlight is enough now, barely, but enough. The herd follows wordlessly. Even Wirako walks with reverence, his hooves avoiding loose stones with the grace of a llama who's suddenly aware he's walking into legend. The air thickens, not with mist, but with meaning. That strange sense that you're not just in a place, but part of it. You reach the edge of the ruins just before dawn. No grand gate, no glowing sign. Just a low arch, half swallowed by vines, and a stone stair that leads down, not into darkness, but into memory. You pass beneath the arch. The earth cools, the world narrows and then opens. Pakaritampu unfolds like a forgotten book. Terraces hug the hillsides. Low walls curve in patterns too intricate to be accidental. At the center, a hollowed bowl of land, shaped like a spiral, descends toward a single, standing stone, ringed by offerings, feathers, cloth, bones, ash. No people, but traces of them everywhere. This place isn't abandoned. It's just between visits. You find a flat stone and sit. The llamas circle slowly. Kayla curls beside your legs. Chuki starts grooming Wirako with all the delicate aggression of a sibling trying to be helpful and mean at once. You open the pouch, draw out the quipu, the tablet, the cord. The final knot is not yet tied, but the space for it is ready. You unroll the quipu across your lap. The knots shimmer in the early light. You add one dried flower, found back at the sacred lake, to the threads. Then you pick up the yellow cord and pinch the final space between your fingers. Your hands tremble. You don't tie it yet, you just feel it. And you listen. There it is again, the rhythm. Not in your ears, not in your mind, but in your bones. A beat, faint, steady. A message with no words, but all the weight in the world. You think of everything now, the road from Urak Pampa, the canyon, the salt hills, the sacred lake, the whistling man in the gorge, the woman with the same cord. All of it led here. You tie the knot, not tight, not loose, just right. And when you do, something shifts, not outside you, inside, as though a story, long tangled and interrupted, has found its final sentence. The clay tablet warms slightly in your palm. You place it beside the quipu at the base of the central stone and step back. The sun crests the eastern peak. Its light cuts across the ruins, illuminates the stone, the cords, the offering ring. You exhale and wait. But nothing else happens. No voices, no lightning, just the quiet settling into place, and a sense that the message, whatever it was, has arrived. You sit beside the stone for hours, watching the wind, letting the silence bloom. Eventually you gather your things, not everything. You leave the tablet, you leave the quipu, you walk out lighter. The herd rises with you. The sky above is wide and warm now, cloudless. You begin the trail back, not to a destination, but to a next step. A new thread. Someone else will walk this road, maybe years from now, maybe tomorrow. They'll find what you left, and maybe they'll understand it better. But that doesn't matter because you carried it, and now it lives where it was meant to. You glance back one last time. Pakaritampu gleams in full light, real, quiet, eternal, and you smile, because sometimes the quietest lives carry the loudest truths, and sometimes the most ordinary feet walk the longest legends. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into the final stretch of tonight's journey together. Let your breath settle now. Let the rhythm slow. You've walked a long way tonight, along sunlit cliffs and through valleys that remember the stories most people forgot. The trail behind you is long and winding, but it's quiet now. The llamas are resting. The stones have stopped whispering. And the wind, for once, carries only stillness. Your shoulders can relax. Your fingers no longer need to grip the pack straps. There's no message left to carry. No forgotten knot to decode. Just the hush of a mountain sleeping and the warmth of a final fire burning low. You can feel the quipu still, not in your hands, but in the space just beneath your ribs, like a memory tucked behind the heart. Soft, safe. The sky above fades gently, stars blooming like slow-breathing embers. And as the world cools around you, you lie back on the earth, the very earth that held every footstep, every decision, every knot that mattered. You've carried history, not for glory, not for reward, but because it asked to be carried. And now, finally, you can rest. Close your eyes. Let the herd drift out of sight. Let the trail dissolve. There's nothing more to do tonight. Nothing more to prove. You were the keeper of the message, the walker of the road, and now you sleep.